be given surgery to convert her into a boy because she once said under pressure from a bunch of lefties that she felt more like a boy. If you think there's something wrong with that, then you are in favour of violence against transgenders. You're not woke. Right?
No, more precisely, it's not that you're in favor of violence against transgender. It's that is violence against transgender.
Yeah, to even say that is violence against transgender. That's right. That's right. That's right. So that's what I think of as woke. I mean, to me, at the peak of woke, when it was, I mean, woke gradually got to a bigger and bigger part of the culture. And when I really began to be irritated by it was when it was a transgender thing, you know, because, I mean, I do accept, although you might think it very benighted and dogmatic of me, I do accept fundamental biology. You know, there is male and female, and I don't have to say created he them. Although I did have a Protestant Christian background many decades ago, so I know that. But there is a reality that sex has something to do with reproduction. And when people talk about gender, they're usually talking about sex in a peculiarly indirect way. And in order for it to work reproductively, there have to be two alternatives. In other words, it has to be binary. So you know, that's how I quickly realised I was anti-woke, and there is something called woke. And you know, so when I first heard this business about right-wing woke, I quickly figured out that it was because people like James Lindsay want to keep on getting Zionist money. It's that simple, actually. You know, and it's all the people who say there is right-wing woke, they're all Zionists, and they're not only
right. Yeah,
and it goes without saying that if you're a Zionist, you know, I'm a bit irritated when I hear people say that Zionism means that Israel is number one. No, Israel is number one. Number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Israel is everything. What that means is the extermination of the Palestinians is everything. Everything else has to, whether they're Christians or Muslims, everything else has to be set aside because we must establish the right of these people who came from Europe in the 1940s to exterminate the local population who've been there for thousands of years.
This
you
is
know,
called trauma.
What?
This is called trauma.
Trauma? What's called trauma? Eating that stuff?
No, what you're saying, it's they're suffering from trauma.
Oh, they're very upset when you point this out to them.
Well, no, I mean,
but I don't mind upsetting them. They are massacring and raping and torturing thousands of people every day. So why would I care about upsetting them?
Ernie.
Yeah, when we talk about that, we have to, I think, acknowledge the great similarities between what the early settlers in the United States did to the Native Americans and what Europeans are now doing, mostly Europeans, in the Western Middle East. You know, there were 7 to 13 million Native Americans killed, so the number's a little bit larger, but it's still like, I think it's the same thing, and they justify it with the concept of manifest destiny, which the people back in the early days of our country, I think that's when they came up with it. I don't know, maybe it's an older term than that, which essentially says, well, we will make better use of this land than these savages that have it now, so we're just going to take it.
Yeah,
that's basically, and that's a very similar thing to what's happening, I think, in.
Yeah, I think that's basically right, but don't misunderstand what I'm about to say.
Mm-hmm.
The retention of the land by the indigenous population was absolutely impossible.
You mean in the Middle East or here?
No, I mean here in America.
Oh, okay.
I mean, in other words, now this doesn't affect the moral judgment you make about people who brutalized and killed what we can call Indians. Native Americans or whatever. It doesn't excuse them or anything, although there were some exceptions. William Penn was an exception, and there were other exceptions, people who said we should deal with these people on a basis of equity. But still, what actually happened was brutal, and there were terrible injustices, but there was never any chance that the native population could survive. Mm-hmm. Whereas the big thing about Palestine is that the vast majority of the Jews in the world have never had the slightest inclination to go there.
Yeah, yeah.
And therefore, unless you exterminate the population, it's always going to be a majority non-Jewish. So this introduces, it's not a moral thing, it's a practical thing. You know, the Palestinians could survive because they were there in such numbers that the number of people the Zionists could persuade Jewish people to come to Palestine was very small. So, I mean, that's just a fact. You know, it doesn't excuse the settlers in North America or the settlers in New Zealand, Australia, and other places where native populations were treated very badly, in some cases exterminated.
Yep.
I mean, one of the most dramatic instances is the population of Tasmania.
Where?
Tasmania, yeah, that's that big island off the south coast of Australia. There was the whites decided we're going to kill every Tasmanian.
Yeah.
And they just went through the whole island and killed every Tasmanian.
I think that's basically...
And that, you know, that's just appalling. You know, ethically, that's just appalling. I mean, even if you sort of bought into the idea that these Tasmanians were sort of subhuman and didn't have high IQs or whatever, it's still appalling. You know, you wouldn't do that to deer or elephants, right? Without having some qualms, anyway. But the fact is, they could easily do it.
Yeah. Whereas
the Palestinians is a bigger nut to chew on. It's a bigger, whatever. It's a big, you know. It's more to swallow.
You don't think they can exterminate them if they want to?
What?
You don't think they can just exterminate them if they want to?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think they've been holding back?
No,
well,
they haven't been holding back.
Eventually, the other Muslims in the world will help them. Right now, they're just sitting back.
I mean, a lot of Muslims in the world don't care.
Huh?
A lot of Muslims in the world don't care.
Well, they don't now, but they.
You know, and the governments of Saudi Arabia and places like that really don't care about the Palestinians, but they do understand. They have a sort of instinctive understanding that the populations they rule over might care.
Yeah.
You know, the population of Egypt, if you put it to a vote, would not say we should allow the Zionists to continue to exterminate the Palestinians. You know, they would say no, we should fight against this. So, you know, I mean, it is too late for the Zionists to get away with it. That's as a practical matter. No, there is a moral thing here that it's appalling to exterminate a native population, but there is also a practical thing. They can't get away with it. You know,
yeah.
And they're not going to be allowed to. You know, and the point is this: if the Israelis suffer a lot of harm, a lot of them are just going to leave.
Well,
and we see this since the 12-day war.
Israel had
you know,
a drain of population.
They go back to Long Island.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I mean,
that was happening for a while. I don't know if it's
right. Oh, I think I mean, one of the things that when I first started hearing about the Israel-Palestine problem back in the 1950s and 1960s, one of the things that people occasionally would say explicitly is, if you're Jewish, this is a safe place to go. There's no less safe place. If you're a Jew in America or Europe or wherever, is it safe to go to Palestine? I wouldn't think so. You know. So I mean, this is a practical thing. It's a factual thing. It's not a moral thing. It's a practical thing. They have lost the chance. They've lost the chance. I don't think they ever had a chance, because if they'd been more brutal at the beginning, people would have turned against them quicker. You know. So I don't think they ever had the chance.
And you don't think they could have just plain been good neighbors?
Well, I mean,
Which they haven't been.
that's a whole different approach.
Yeah.
We are, you know, the Balfour Declaration said a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. A national home doesn't necessarily mean a state.
Yeah.
You know, you could argue that the Sioux and Apache, or are there any Apaches? Probably not. Sioux reservations are a national home, right? It's a kind of courtesy to say the Sioux are a nation, because a nation has certain connotations which they never had. But still, it's well meant. It's a well meant sentiment. But you know, there are these Indian reservations. You could say they are national homes. So you could have, the Jews could have taken the position, or the Zionists could have taken the position, we just want a national home in Palestine, which with limited borders, that we will coexist with the Arab. They called them Arabs, although they didn't come from Arabia, because they were Arabic speaking, I suppose. So the Arabs are the majority and will always be the majority, but we would like our little niche in this country. They could have taken that line. They would have been very vulnerable. They wouldn't have been so proud of themselves. They would have been, you know, they would have negotiated painfully. They would have, you know, and so on. But the Zionists from the beginning didn't think like that. They knew they had to exterminate the Palestinians. They knew that. That was their objective. You know, before 1948, in 1947, when the huge number of them arrived from Europe, they knew that that's what they had to do.
So this Zionistic thinking in the U.S. government with the neocons, that doesn't seem to explain all of the interventionism thinking, like the Manifest Destiny thing, or whatever it's called. No, Monroe Doctrine.
Right.
That thing, right? Like, what were the two countries you were saying, Brazil and Argentina? Why should the government be afraid of China's involvement in those places or against it?
Well, I don't think they should be, but I think they're bound to be, because
get into their head, see how they feel.
I don't think they should be. I think it's fine. I think from my way of thinking, which is fundamentally free trade is great, and the economic development of every part of the world is great, right? That's my first gut feeling. Attempts to place barriers on that are unfortunate. So, you know.
But I have a question for you. You said that you were comparing how the U.S. government is in the Eastern sphere as opposed to China's involvement in the Western sphere, and like it didn't seem fair, the reaction. Like, how can you be interventionist here but complain about China there?
Right. It's asymmetric.
But why isn't China's involvement in South America intervention?
Because it's a deal between two parties. It's bilateral. It's not unilateral.
What's the United States being interventionist in the Eastern sphere?
Unilateral. It's unilateral. You change the regime, or you use guns. That's typical unilateral.
So
like
what
Venezuela,
examples?
Okay, go
Another way of saying it is voluntary versus involuntary, right? If it's bilateral, it's voluntary between the two countries. If it's unilateral,
or multilateral, it's international democracy.
Sure.
It's international democracy, multilateral. So we have multilateral. We have multipolar world, but U.S. still does unilateral way. We should have multilateralism that comes with multipolar. But U.S. still insists on unilateral. For example, you went in Caracas to adopt the president and his wife. That's unilateral.
I think I agree with you completely, although we should attach the rider that many US businesses have been involved in developing countries in a way that was completely consensual, and they didn't do any harm. And in some cases, they later got power and started to do harm, like the United Fruit Company in Cuba. But initially, it was a good deal for everybody, including the people of Cuba. So, you know, we shouldn't fall into the leftist idea of hating business, you know, just because it's international. So there have been many cases where Western businesses have developed something in developing countries that has been altogether good.
Well, okay, I'm
Right.
playing devil's advocate here too. So that on the one side, and then looking at China in the South American countries, the difference being that it's Chinese government, it's not individual businesses, private businesses. So that's not, that's different.
For you,
This
it's different
power.
because you have an American mind. You have a Western mind.
She does have an American mind.
Yeah.
I can
But it is-
I'm not
it is a
faulting you. I'm
difference in
just
power.
pointing out the source of your understanding or interpretation.
Yeah.
You're a creature of capitalism. You have American mind. That's how you think. Well, there's a difference between government and private business. But in a socialist country like China, that distinction, that line is not very. It's very blurred or it's drawn different way. For example,
That's what I
the
was
key
actually
industries.
saying, is that it isn't different. It's you have the power of the state behind you, whereas a private business going into a country doesn't.
So that's what I'm saying. It's unilateral versus multilateral. So if it's multilateral, it's international democracy. It's unilateral, it's anything but. So if it's bilateral, if it's not unilateral, it's bilateral or multilateral. Those are the same thing. Because if it's two-country business, what's to the third party? So you can only the most bilateral. That's in contrast to unilateral. So if Chinese government, right, the company is a state-owned company, right? So for you, it's essentially the government. That's fine. It doesn't change the fact it's bilateral. It's not unilateral, because there's no one put a gun to their head for the Peruvian government head. Say we had to build a port here, right? And they like it. I'm sure I see reports of the population. They're against it, just like environmentalists here. They say, oh man, the Chinese are digging this stuff. They totally changed the ecology. They changed the landscape. We don't like it. Our house is too close. So we're against it. So they come out and say, okay, we'll give you compensation. We'll give you some money, or we'll help you move, or give you some money. That sort of thing. But as far as their government, their sovereign country, their government, they're cooperating. They figure that's a good deal for them. If it's not a good deal for them, they will negotiate. They will renegotiate. They will do it. They will see if they reap the benefit. They have leverage on the Chinese government. For example, in a lot of cases, the Belt and Road Initiative, Chinese are like, hey, we just use our own workers. We have the company, the capital, and we also use our workers there. Not just managers, we workers there. The local overtime is like, hey, you're not alleviating our unemployment issue, so you got to use local. So China said, oh, okay, we'll just use local, or partial local, just evolve into that. That's sort of, they're local people, they have a lot of clout. Not to mention the initiation of the deal is between two governments, or you can say one state-owned company versus the other government. But that's congruent with the Chinese foreign policy, because it's not a popularity contest. It's about strategic values, because of trade, continue the China's independence, sovereignty. So they're not under threat of easily under a certain bloc or a certain country. They have diversified, they have the reach, they have the support internationally. So everything else fail, they get goodwill, right? So there's a multifaceted foreign policy. It's
I'm just trying to be a devil's advocate and look at it at the point a view from, I guess, like the neocons and why they're afraid and what they see that, I mean, large corporations can have a big effect too, but having the whole state of China behind somewhere close by in your hemisphere, right? You know.
How they feel about it? Yeah, I mean,
I think
Like,
there's
if China had companies, coming into Mexico, right, on the border?
it's a kind of complicated.
I mean, I think there's a point here, and that is that imagine you're someone who has the kind of outlook on the world of Vladimir Putin, right? So he's someone who grew up in the Soviet bureaucracy, was worked for most of his life for the KGB, although not as a spy, right, but as a general intellectual dealing with this and that, analyst, journalist, and so on, but still worked for the KGB, a government body, and has now reached the point in Russia where he could say to Tucker Carlson, "We're just as bourgeois as you," because there's been so much privatization in Russia. So if you take the outlook of a technocrat like that, someone who's a technocrat and who just tries to resolve issues in the national interest according to matters of technique and fact and expertise and so on, you can see that the Soviet system didn't really work, and you need to improve on that. And one of the ways you need to improve upon that is having a lot of private businesses. So long ago, Vladimir Putin and all the people who are now in his cabinet and associates of his, Lavrov and Medvedev and all those people, they understand that they are running a system in which there's a lot of private business as well as a lot of government operations. But so look at it from their point of view. From their point of view, one of the disadvantages of using the government to conduct business is you do get this reaction. People are going to be, what? I'm dealing with the Chinese government. Whereas if it was a Chinese private company, the Chinese government could disclaim all responsibility. And, I'm looking at it in a completely neutral kind of way, objective way. That kind of technocrat would see there's an advantage in having a lot of private companies, especially since all private companies in modern capitalist societies are heavily regulated, and you can make them do whatever the government wants to do anyway. Right. So that's another aspect of all this. But I think that it is true that if private Chinese companies were doing all this stuff in the Belt and Road Initiative, in railroads in Peru or whatever, it would be harder for the US to come up with a rationale for being against this, and being against it to the point of violence, right? But on the other hand, the US government, the neocons, come out with all kinds of nonsense all the time, and they don't care that it sounds ridiculous to anybody who knows anything about it. Apparently, they just repeat all this stuff. So I think that even if it was private Chinese companies, the neocons in the US would say, "Oh, it's Chinese," and here they may say they're private. It would be like it would go like that. They're really just under the thumb of Xi Jinping. And so.
Yeah. What about the oil companies that are back in Venezuela?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me share an observation with you pertaining to your question. The more hawkish one is toward China, they will tend to say, instead of China, they will say Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, because
it
Communist China
carries a bad connotation.
Yeah.
Not only the country, the party.
Yeah. And of course, if you question them about this, the people who talk like this know nothing about the history of communism. They don't know about Marx or Lenin or any of that, right? They just mean that it's not a free society. That's what they're getting at when they say communist, right? It's a totalitarian society,
One party system.
and they don't really distinguish between a totalitarian society and a authoritarian society, because you can have an authoritarian dictatorship that doesn't pry into all kinds of aspects of daily life, right? And that's more bearable. So Franco's regime in Spain was like that. It was very, very authoritarian, and it picked up and executed and tortured a lot of people whose only crime was they had been on the other side in the Civil War, right, from 1936 to 1939. And of course, the West didn't complain about what Franco was doing because he was anti-communist after the war, right? And because he never joined Hitler, right? So.
Apple and cherry.
Oh, cherries.
So you know, so that's part of it. The fact that China doesn't have like a Bill of Rights, a First Amendment, election to the highest posts, is used by neocons and people like that to say, oh, it's a totally different kind of society. Well, you know, my view is that once a society is modernized to a considerable extent, as China has, there's a lot of liberalism in practice. You know, I mean, and intellectuals tend to overlook this, because to an intellectual, the freedom to pass out leaflets on the street is of tremendous importance, and it may be, but to 99% of the population it's of no importance at all, since they never feel inclined to pass out leaflets on the street, right? It's a different, you know, it's a different conception, and this comes back to the thing that's been of concern to me a lot recently, which is that when you have a religion, which could be Christianity, or it could be Scientology, or it could be Marxism. When you have a religion, you have a tiny group of enthusiastic leaders, and then you have a large number of adherents who think, oh, we'd better go along with this, because it's what everybody's saying, or because it's what people we respect are saying. And this goes back to the evolution of humans in packs, where you have over millions of years, pre-humans as well, you've got the idea that you have to go along with the pack, and you're betraying something fundamental if you start going against the opinions of everybody else in the pack. You know, this is evolutionary psychology, and it needs to be applied to these general political issues. But, I mean, I think what China's done with the Belt and Road Initiative, every specific example I've heard has been, I thought, well, that's great.
Why is it called that?
Because traditionally, Marco Polo, he went from Italy through the Silk Road. It's called Silk Road, that goes through Central Asia, through today's Xinjiang, some western, northwest Chinese provinces, all the way to Nanjing at the time, not Beijing, a different capital. So that's called Silk Road. So now Xi Jinping's initiative say we want to create a modern day Silk Road. So it's one road, like a Silk Road, through land, one belt through the sea. So that one road, one belt, one road initiative. Belt and Road Initiative.
Belt?
Yeah, belt.
Belt and road.
Yeah. So in addition to the traditional Silk Road that Marco Polo followed, not just Marco Polo, at the time, the merchants, they follow that. We want a modern version. In addition to the land road, we have a belt. We have a belt around the earth, through ocean, maritime.
Okay.
But over time, it's just a name because it doesn't go through narrowly like one path. Right? It goes through Africa, goes to South America, just wherever you go, if China can cooperate with you, can invest with you, do some economic development, and it's part of the Belt and Road Initiative.
I've read over the years, over recent 5 years or so, I've read lots of analyses of Belt and Road. I've never come across a single case where it's been alleged that the Chinese side imposed undue coercion. It's always, if there's some kind of setback because the non-Chinese side says, oh, we don't like this, they always back off immediately and say, okay, we'll negotiate that. So I think the Belt and Road, insofar as it's an actual practical thing, is altogether a good thing. It's helped to develop all kinds of things in Africa and South America. By the way, two things.
Better not be South America. That's our backyard.
Yeah, right, exactly. But it is
your
South
backyard.
America. It is South America. So we'll see how the US likes it. But anyway, two things about Marco Polo, right? One is that he brought back noodles from China.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And that's why we have spaghetti and all the other pasta, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for over 100 years after his death, it was an expression in Italian, Marco Polo, meaning a big whopper, a big lie, because nobody believed what Marco Polo. They read it for entertainment, but they said, no, this wasn't true. Nothing like that is going on in China.
Really?
Yeah, he just made it all up. And so for 100 years or more, the Italian term for a whopper, a big lie, was a Marco Polo.
That's good.
Yeah, I kind of heard that. It's actually made up.
But
Well,
I don't know either way.
the way you were explaining the state and the private entities coming into China, it's very similar to how the oil fields are managed here in the U.S. Because basically, the oil companies don't own the land that they're pumping the oil out of. They lease the mineral rights. They pump it. They pump it out, but everybody gets paid out of it. Would that be accurate? This depiction?
I guess it's that case by case, but there's a convention. There's a common way, right? Yeah, you have the right, but you don't own the. Why would you want to own the land?
Right,
It's expensive to own the land. You just extract minerals from the land. When it gets exhausted, you leave. But if you own the land, you have to figure out where to sell it to, and nobody wants to buy it because there's nothing in the land.
Yeah, if all you're using it for is mineral extraction, there's no point in owning the land.
Right. So
right?
logically,
if you're going to develop permanent.
Again, without knowledge, you use logic, right? So why would you want to own the land? You have the right. Of course, in exchange for the right to extract, there's all kinds of deal. Also, when capital is involved, the loan deal. That's only if you're involved, you have that.
See, that expression says a lot about me because, like, without knowledge, you use logic. Is that what you said? Something like that?
That's your...
I guess that's why I'm so logical.
Sorry. That's a tribute to you.
Yeah.
I can only say great minds think alike. Sort of thing.
Well, I think...
You said... What?
Yeah, I think without knowledge you use logic. That could be more accurately phrased. You know, it's if you don't know the facts, then then it's okay to construct a hypothetical scenario that seems reasonable to arrive at possible facts.
Until you're proven wrong. I mean, it's open.
Right.
It's
oh
open.
yeah, no,
It's definitely open.
I agree with you. It pains me to have to say this, Eric, but I agree with you.
You said something.
I feel your pain.
You said something to me that I think like a American capitalist or something.
Capitalist mind, American
capitalist
mind.
American mind, yeah.
You're a creature of capitalism.
Yeah.
That's my opening
the thing
last
is,
week.
And you.
But he's a creature of capitalism as well.
Everybody
He just
is.
doesn't know it.
I am.
But I think I remember you once disagreeing with me that I thought that China's very capitalist.
China's not a capitalist country.
That was actually a debate.
Yeah, I haven't changed my mind on that.
We had a debate about this, and Eric lost and I won.
The companies that I deal with are so incredibly capitalist.
Right. They may
so
become.
competitive.
I think
they may
Chinese
become a
are
creature of capitalism.
instinctively capitalist.
But if I'm creature of capitalism, capitalism. No question about it. But I'm conscious of it. So I know what's not a creature of capitalism. That opens the door for me to think the other way. And also know in the 3D version of creature of capitalism. Myself being out of it, although I am creature of capitalism. What you're describing is probably a market, or free market, as opposed to capitalism. Free market does not equate capitalism. Free market is maybe you can say it's a necessary condition of capitalism, but not the other way around. And free market, or relatively free market, have been existing since a long time ago, before capitalism became exist. Before 1776.
Everybody agrees with that.
What's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think
Oh, that's a long story. We had a debate.
If you took money out of the equation, you could still have capitalism.
Well, capitalism always involves money, but that's as a practical matter. But you know,
Do you mean free market isn't capitalism? No. If
in the Middle Ages, you have free market on many things. Of course, in the Middle Ages, you don't have a job market. The labor is not a market. Property is not a market. But you have many things. You have market of wheat. You can market of other things. You can market of horses or armor, right? So that doesn't make it capitalism. No one said Middle Ages at 1200 is capitalism time. No, only after Industrial Revolution, Adam Smith, that people recognize, okay, we call it capitalism because it's this and this and this, and they have market mechanism.
I don't get it.
And China, as a socialist country, politically and economically, they decided to adopt market into their socialist system. So that's where we see the development that we have.
One of the most markety countries that I've ever dealt with. I mean, the companies that I deal with are so whatever you want to call it.
If they
competitive.
If they want to play the game,
dealers,
for one thing, okay, that's not the whole thing, but one thing, if they want to play the game in the United States, in the world market, in this market system, they have to play it like a market person. But that doesn't make them capitalism or capitalist, because that requires more. Because number one, their economy is top down. The economy is top down. The government select the key industry they call high something industry. They choose those industries to keep them state owned, but they let other industry private. And there's a command. Just structurally it's top down, as opposed to U.S. like system is bottom up. So you have kind of imbalance. You have like oversized, too big to fail, or very huge wealth gap. Then you come in and fix it, because you start with individual, then people play with the rule. Over time, you see that huge discrepancy, wealth gap. That's detrimental to people and to some people. So you're under pressure. You have to fix it. Then you come in to fix it as an afterthought. Use taxes. Use all different policies, regulations. Try to even up a little bit, right? So that's U.S. system, capitalism. But Chinese or socialism, they started out as everybody being equal. Everybody's supposed to be equal, or the unequal is not supposed to be too big. That's where they start out, as opposed to U.S. They start out everybody free to make whatever for yourself. Then they come in to fix when the inequality is too huge. But China, they started out, their starting point is equality. But over time, because the market mechanism, because the freedom that they enjoy, they become have wealth inequality. Then they adjust their system, the socialist system. So that's from a different place. You know what I'm saying? One is top down, the other is bottom up. One is the afterthought. The other one will fix the system, because the system is not doing exactly what it's designed to do, because you're adopting this market mechanism was not initially designed by Marx or the socialist thought.
So, some kid, sorry, some kid goes to school and he thinks, I want to have a business selling, whatever.
Widgets.
Yeah, widgets. Can he go and start a business?
In China?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How is that? I don't get how
Because
that's
he
different.
falls into the realm of private enterprise
Yeah.
area, but he's not gonna start, let's say, aviation company, aerospace production company. That he cannot do because that's state-owned.
So he's limited to
big.
what ventures he could go into.
Right.
But
To
so
the
the
area
thing is
that's
like a really gifted person, visionary, and like Elon Musk type person, and he's created some new technology, right? And he can't build that business into something really big.
If it's something really new, I mean, it depends on the scale. It depends on, in the government's judgment, how significant that is, the implication on the society as a whole. They will decide if it's something new meaning there's no rule or example that should be in the public realm or private realm. Then that's a brand new thing the government has to decide. The government is not the government like it is here. It's not controlled by capitalists. It's not controlled by money. It's controlled by something else, some other oligarchy. Just like what David said, quoting those thinkers. Oligarchy is everywhere. Any society is controlled by a few people. But what controls China, that's another distinction between China system and the capitalist system. Because the oligarchy is not money, it's not capital. It's something else. Well, I can get into that. But here, definitely it's money.
Sounds
So
like
that's
Chris
different
has something.
So, and it's tying into what she was saying. Same child, okay, is a savant, and he can't get into aerospace. What if he developed an O-ring for the fuel lines that complement aerospace? Can he still maintain a private business, or the moment that it reaches into that technology, then it
Depends
becomes
on the government's judgment. For example, Huawei. We have like a
Right.
very example close enough.
What's
It's
that?
a telecommunication
Oh, yeah.
company that mainly telecommunication. Now it gets to AI, gets into microprocessor, the chips industry. So that's a new to China. Let me see. Huawei is not state-owned actually.
okay.
So there's
But
a
so
company
the
system. I'm
government-
simplifying. Even see important like that. It's a fundamental basis industry, right? It's not state-owned. You'd be surprised, but steel is probably state-owned. The company that designed planes state-owned.
Well, it's a matter of degree, isn't it? Because Thatcher deregulated, what was the trains or something? What was it? What did she do? That was government. We have utilities and things, and it wasn't, not completely private.
To you,
but, they're kind of...
could be arbitrary in appearance, right? I'm not arguing against that because in my case, yeah, I see a lot of arbitrary too. But I'm just telling you the design of the system. Of course, there's some aberration within the system. Well,
Do they
that's
have
the
a
fact
stock
of life.
market?
Huh?
Do they have a stock market in China?
Yes,
There
they have
So
two
are
stock
two
markets.
stock markets, Hong Kong
The
and
second
Shanghai.
biggest stock market in the world.
And that's in Hong Kong?
Yeah,
And Shanghai.
and there's another one,
Shanghai.
there's two.
All right, so they can't accumulate enough capital. The limitation on starting an aviation company is it takes a huge amount of
But there are
capital.
Chinese billionaires, private
Yeah,
billionaires.
there are many of those, yeah, at this point. But,
Whoever owns Temu and Shine
Yeah, some Chinese guy, Ching Chong something.
and Alibaba.
But you're the one that said that.
Yeah. Well, you can say that. Jack Ma is Alibaba.
Jack Ma, yeah.
Wasn't he in trouble
Couldn't
for a
see it.
while?
Huh?
Wasn't he in trouble
Do I
for a
have
while?
your
Like he went
email?
missing
Yeah, he
or
was
something?
he was
So,
running
put
his
you on the
mouth
list.
He was running
publicly
his mouth, yeah.
because China was reforming their banking system,
thank you.
financial system.
You only get one.
He was
Oh,
mocking, was
okay, that's
laughing
fine.
with a
One is enough.
big convention.
Oh,
probably
so
some
you're
kind of.
French?
I don't know, some
Well,
convention,
Canadian, yeah.
industry
Yeah.
convention.
You are.
Because he himself,
Yeah.
not only
Gotta-
Alibaba,
We'll see you
Gotta
in
go
the
pay the
college.
price for being out all night.
You'll be in the
My wife's
college
a
on
pleasure
Saturday,
to
right?
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Good
Oh,
to
it's a
see you
pleasure.
I
again.
won't be in the college.
And you won't be in the college on Saturday?
I don't think
Will
so,
you be,
no.
you'll be in the college Saturday.
Yeah, somebody's gotta moderate those,
Yeah.
that unruly crowd.
I know, especially when they're talking about God, for Pete's sakes. You gotta
That's
be
not
careful.
tomorrow, that's next
That's
week.
next
Yeah,
week.
it's not tomorrow, yeah.
Okay.
Where
It's every other week.
college has gone to every other Saturday. That's how they solve the problem of not having enough speakers. Which is, it works.
When is David Ramsey Steele's video from like, I wanna say summer of 2024 gonna get posted?
I just started taking
Right,
over
there's the
hosting
one,
last week.
Yeah, but
From,
as far as
Tim
the
Bolger?
recordings.
Well, no, Tim does the AV for
Yeah.
now,
Okay,
and I do the moderation.
okay.
Yeah,
Step
sure,
on
yeah.
anybody's
it's
feet.
November, it's in October 2024.
Dude,
You talk about
I don't know when the last
Ukraine
time
and
it was.
Multiple
Good talk,
world,
it was a
actually,
good
you were
talk.
talking about.
I don't remember when the last time was that I haven't checked it in maybe a week or two, but like he hasn't updated his Tim Bolger channel in a long time.
I know.
Since June.
Since June is what they were saying before, that's
Here-
too many.
Anytime, because I've been there when people have asked him, he's like, well, Charlie wants me to do all sorts of things with these videos before I post them.
Yeah, but why don't we ask Charlie?
Eh,
It's like,
What did you ask him to do?
well, no, he wants them to trim out like
Oh,
some
he
of the
did
dead spots.
actually.
I know, and I'm like, I'm talking to the same guy that dips out every 5 minutes to smoke.
Right.
Also, the longer you wait, the more you lag behind, the more impossible that for you to catch up.
Right. So, and part of me transitioning into doing some of the AV work as well is to give him time to get all that stuff uploaded.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay.
and to update our
Because
AV.
like David's been asking, I've been asking. I try to advocate on your behalf.
I can't even remember what that talk was about.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't.
Yeah, the multipolar world. That's why we met. That's
Oh,
where we
okay.
met. Multipolar world. You kind of focus on Ukraine a lot.
Right.
But no, I mean, and the short answer is, I'm told he's working on it.
You gotta. So next time you see him, I don't know. Maybe I'll be there. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't have enough time. But like, next time you see him, just say, hey, yeah, I was at David Ramsey Steele's, and a topic came up on updated. Just as another little.
Organically toss it in there,
Just
yeah.
like toss it in there as like, oh yeah, people were asking about it. Just throw that in.
It's not gonna affect it.
If pushing harder,
What
Yeah, that's
my
awesome.
approach is, hey Tim, hopefully I'm being of good service for you here. This is, if you ever want to think about a way to where you can sit there and make it worth my while, start uploading all those videos.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not asking for money. Upload the videos. That's how you can pay me back.
Very good, very
It's
good.
diplomatic.
Compensation in kind rather than in cash. That's very, very good. Oh, like
So
I try to advocate for you.
Thank you.
That's why libertarians make the best office holders.
You will be rewarded in your future life.
Thank you.
If I have any say in the
The
matter.
reason Tim is appreciated.
Well, the Muslims are offering 72 of them, so I'd like a few.
Right. Well, I'll offer 73.
All right. Good enough.
And a half.
is in 5 years, he's only missed 2 Saturdays.
I only need like
So-
5. I don't. That's greedy.
Strength. But he doesn't get the stuff up where you can look at it.
Well, and Ernie and I have actually talked about like moving forward to where it's like we put it on, like, because not Tim, Charlie's concerned about getting strikes on YouTube and everything like that because of some of the COVID talk during the lockdowns and that sort of thing.
That's excuses.
But those are excuses, right? To where it's like, hey, if
That's
worst case scenario,
outrageous.
we can keep it on a network accessible storage. You can have a link from the website, goes straight to, hey, here's your video. As a matter of fact, if I had my way, which may come to fruition rather soon, to where within a week, everybody has a copy of their video in their inbox.
Well, Tom Berry in the Dallas group has a link up that night, or at the latest.
Well,
the
no, I
next
mean
day.
like a physical, like on whether it be on a thumb drive or something like that, to where it's like
Yeah, it's a Zoom.
Like
it's a Zoom.
actual file of the
like
video,
the
right?
raw video
right.
footage, and it's
Right.
like, hey, it might take a little while for us to polish up, to where we put it on the YouTube page, but here's a recording of yours, and you can do your own polishing, and do transitions
that's a
if you
good
want,
idea.
that sort of thing, to where it's like, you get the raw video footage, we're gonna doll it up and put it on.
Sounds like
You
the
guys
Texas
could
people
just
know what they're
be-
doing.
You
Well,
guys
no, I mean, it,
could just put
I
yourselves
don't think
out
it's that
there and live
complicated.
stream.
I don't know
Well,
why.
we do Zoom,
Oh, okay.
it is on Zoom, which should make it easier for them.
So
to upload.
here's a problem with here's a problem with the live stream. Okay, here's a problem. At least something I've witnessed with my own two eyes, and the bleach wouldn't take it out. There has been at least once where somebody on Zoom comes in and they're there just to cause trouble,
Oh.
and they put up
Oh,
adult-themed video content
wow.
onto
What?
the screen.
No,
I've seen
what?
that once or twice.
That.
Are
Yeah.
you serious?
3 times, oh yeah.
Yeah.
What? No.
And in fact, I remember I sent a text to Justin for one of the videos. I can't remember, or maybe it was an email. And I was like, you know, Tim might want to take this section to this section down. And then, like, I think he had a response back like, holy shit, yeah, you should.
Well,
Oh
and
my
that's what I'm talking
gosh,
about with
that's
polishing
crazy.
it up. You know, you could sit there and pixelate the naughty images, if whatever you want to call it, and you could polish it up to where it's ready for public consumption. But hey, you can still get either a through the camera or video footage from that was recorded that night, and you could polish it up on your own.
You know, like, I'm curious if there's a way, like, if it's just too, like, burdensome, like, too, like, daunting, if it's too daunting a task, the backlog, whatever Tim has, like, does he have the files where he can just kind of give it to somebody else to offload that?
That's my next question with them. Like, hey, how can I help you do it?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
how can I, hey, I know it's a lot of work to do. Let me help you out by taking on some of that burden off your hands.
right.
It's
Right.
the whole get whatever, rather than whipping you, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna favor you to give it to me.
Yep.
That's good.
Don't tell my
It's gonna
secret.
shatter
I'm glad to know that you're gonna have a more active role there. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, because Charlie was looking to just cancel, like cut it all together. And people were saying, well, we're gonna have to start another one, or maybe we could buy it from them. Like, we're not buying shit. Like, we're gonna convince them that, hey, this is a legacy, we need to keep it moving, we're here to help.
We're here for meeting number 8,256, and then all that. Yeah.
And you were there that night,
What
when
was
Charlie showed up for the 75th anniversary.
Yeah, I was there
that?
too.
Yeah, we had a little meeting.
And we had the
beforehand.
meeting beforehand, and he's like, this is the guy I want helping out, and he was pointing at me, I was like, all right.
Nice.
Yeah, and Tim was okay with that. I thought he'd be protective. When I said, look, Chris here is willing to take some of these weekends. And he said, that's great, I could use some Saturdays off. So, that's good.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna be protective, but he wasn't.
Well, Tim works in a certain way, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, okay, sometimes you have to let the disaster unfold and say, hey, I know it's a lot of work, I'm just here to help where I can. And he's like, you plug this in. I'm like, got it. But looking to get away from that projector screen and all that,
Yeah.
have an actual like TV.
Oh,
See, this is what you guys, once the libertarian takeover of the college is complete, you need to rename it to something more sophisticated, like College of Complexities. Instead of College of Complexes, like we're all running around with psychological complexes and we're battling with ourselves.
That is the joke.
I know, yeah.
You've been to one of those meetings, haven't you?
He's been to a bunch of them over the years.
several of them.
He's spoken at a bunch of them over the years.
Yeah, so
I haven't
like
watched
at
them
least
all,
three,
but,
right?
like-
3 times if I go back. I saw 3 videos of him.
Well, also, it's the service for the speakers as well, because like sometimes they have candidates, and it's like that's footage they could use for their campaign.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you were there for when I was there for giving my campaign.
Yeah. When was that? That was a few years ago now.
Yeah, it was 3.5 years ago.
I've done one for Casey, running for Senate from the Republican Party.
It was an interesting, and I recorded it as an audio. I went to, I think it was whatever one it was it 3 weeks ago, where it was some
a younger-ish woman who was running for like state rep somewhere, but she's like a hardcore socialist.
I missed that one. I wanted to see that because she's, touting, oh yeah, I'm a veteran. Like, okay, let's have a talk. Let's have a chat. Anytime.
Oh, that would have been so great.
that's usually like,
That
okay,
would have been so great.
that's my welcome mat. I'm gonna kick this door.
She's
in.
because like she was a hardcore socialist, and I was asking some really, to her credit, she actually answered them, and hadn't mastered the like art of not answering the question and word salad squid ink stuff. But like I asked her some really good questions, and she did answer them. Like one of the things that she one of them maybe she hadn't developed it far enough. She thinks that there needs to be what is it about like an eviction, something having to do with evictions. Like you can't just evict somebody, you have to like run it through a process. There's something or it like almost like there has to be a committee or something to sign off on it or something like that, and I was kind of pushing back but asking questions about that, and then I asked later about free speech. Do you believe in free speech? And she's like, yeah, I believe in free speech, but I also believe in that it doesn't necessarily come without consequences. And of course, in my mind, it depends what the consequences are. If the consequences are coming from government, that's wrong. If it's just people naturally reacting to what you're doing, then that's fine.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm not sure that she she might have been playing fast and loose, but I think I then asked her about like hate crimes, like hate speech, and she I think she was reluctant to sign off on hate speech legislation outright, but like I think she would have been okay if because then I looped it back into like, let's say I was a renter and the landlord decided to kick me out because I ran my mouth about some protected class or something like that, and I asked would that be within the framework of your having to justify the eviction, and she said I mean it could happen like that, and I said no, but should it? Like I'm asking what would you do as a policy? And she said no, but I don't believe her. I think she lied.
So, well, politicians do lie. Just, I hate to be the one to...
It has been known.
I hate to be the one to tell you.
Wait a minute, I thought I made this discovery of, like, just deductive awesomeness that I.
So, here's the problem that I have with the phrase hate speech.
Well, right, yeah.
Who gets to define what's hateful?
Right.
Because it's always in the offended's eyes. That's number one. Number two, like, the fact that we have hate speech laws is an infringement upon free speech. Yes, you have the freedom to be wrong, and that means being controversial, being bigoted, whatever the case may be. You have the freedom to do such, and there should be no law that infringes your right to do such.
And I'll mention one more thing because you used that specific word bigoted, which triggered in me memories of. When the Mises Caucus took over the Libertarian Party roughly 4-ish years ago. And one of the big controversies at the time, I remember, was there was a plank in there about, we hold that bigotry is irrational and repugnant, or whatever that plank was in their illogical and repugnant, whatever that plank was in their platform. Like, it was literally in their platform. You go to their website, that's what it was. And the Mises Caucus types wanted to take that provision out.
Good for them.
Exactly. Now, obviously, the spin on that is, oh, well, what do you mean? Are you in favor of bigotry? You want to protect nasty bigots and blah, blah, blah. And it's like...
Yes!
Right. Okay. But immediately when I heard of that plank, I thought, like, that's totally bullshit, because...
Then we start getting into who gets to define what bigotry is.
Who gets to define it? It will always be a cudgel of the person who sort of like the Trust and Safety Council of the it's the Trust and Safety Council provision of the Libertarian platform is and then you get to browbeat people like, are you focusing too much on racial demographics with crime statistics? Well, that's a bigoted thing to do, so that runs afoul of our Libertarian Party platform. Like, I could easily see where this is going.
You could weasel your way out of just
you could
any
weasel your way
argument.
into doing all that crap, and I thought not only did they do the right thing by taking it out, but I thought they did a really good thing by what they replaced it with, which was, we will defend the rights of anybody regardless of race, creed, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's the perfect way to do it. The perfect way to do it.
Like hate speech. If I said something derogative about transgender, are you gonna get offended?
I mean...
No, I mean, if I...
Not today.
If I misgendered someone, let's say that. If
Yeah.
I misgendered someone that we both know, are you gonna get offended by it?
No, I'm going to be like laughing inside.
Right. No, I mean, because we have people
I find that
that
offensive.
I mean, I have friends that are transgender. Okay.
Yeah.
If I misgender them, it doesn't make me a criminal.
Right.
It makes me an asshole.
Yeah.
Not necessarily even that.
No, I mean, if I knowingly do it.
Well, why should you go along with their delusions?
Right. But my point is that it's the freedom of speech comes into play. Like, it doesn't make me a criminal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can fully understand knowing someone who thinks they're the opposite sex to what they really are, and I can see going along with that just for the sake of
Getting along, right?
getting along. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, but on the other hand, it doesn't mean that privately I don't think that this is strictly speaking wrong.
Right.
You know?
It's abomination.
Whack, you can't understand it.
Right, and like, but you know, that's because it's a hate crime to misgender someone.
But to think that it's strictly speaking wrong is a hate crime.
Right. Anyway, I'll
Do you all understand what...
Indeed. To speak of right and wrong is too binary. I'm more non-binary with my evaluations of the truth.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Everyone get home
Okay,
safely.
have a good night.
Especially the two of you.
Right. Or a good morning. A good morning, or whatever. Hope to see you next. I've just thought of what I'm going to talk about in the next one.
What is it?
Candace Owens and Sigmund Freud.
Oh dear.
Oh, wow.
Dude,
See,
awesome.
What I've been thinking about recently.
As the speaker, I urge you to save it for next time. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
What I've been thinking about recently is that you get a lot more hits according to how you title it. So, Candace Phillips, what is her name? Candace Owens. Why can't I remember some simple things?
Because she's
It's because
black.
I'm an optimist. No, I haven't had enough wine. You're right.
That's
No,
great.
yeah,
Well timed. Well timed.
No, it's because I'm an octogenarian,
Yeah, too much wine.
senile dementia patient. Anyway, no, I have been thinking about this, but there is a guy called, what's his name? I forget his name, but he was he wrote some good stuff in philosophy, and then he moved from philosophy into writing about popular culture. And he was a McLuhanist. And I did have an interchange with him recently. His name is Paul something, Paul Levinson, Jewish name. So I proposed to him that we have a book on the second coming of McLuhan, or the second coming of Marshall McLuhan. Probably has more of a lilt to it. And he said, yeah, but I've got about 6 other books to write before I can get to it. So I'm going to approach him again, because we really do need a book about media in a general sense that McLuhan highlighted. But one specific aspect of this is, if you put one of these talks that we've just done on YouTube, the number of hits you get will depend heavily on what the title is. So that's why I think I have this point about
10 crazy things about China. Number 7 will shock you.
There you go. Yes.
Candace Owens. By the way, I cannot exaggerate the extent to which the following proposition is true. I am a huge fan of Candace Owens. Can't even get her name. Right. Really,
Yeah,
really.
which one?
She is so amazing. She's so amazing. I mean, it's
She's
like
a fanboy.
it's like a schoolboy crush.
Yeah.
It's like when I was 9 years old and I thought, ooh, that woman's very glamorous. It's like that, but it's not sexual at all. It's just a crush. I mean, she is so brilliant.
She's
But
pretty funny.
and on some points very correct. Like
Yeah.
there's something rotten in the state of TPUSA. That's correct, right? Exactly what it is that's rotten. We can have our little arguments back and forth. It will all come out eventually. But she also, I have to say, although I'm a big fan, and she gets a lot of things absolutely right, she does say some things that just show, I don't know, a lack of the appropriate bourgeois sophistication. I'm a prole, but I would like to aspire to the level of being a bourgeois, right? So, so she has this thing about Sigmund Freud, and it's all wrong.
That's a good
So
one.
my
I like
point
it. I love
is,
it.
my point is, Sigmund Freud was a liar and a con artist. But the refutation of Sigmund Freud does not come from the fact that there is really a lot of child molestation and he covered it up. The real truth is that he said that his patients, as he called them, we would say clients in psychotherapy today, but in those days they called them patients because they were doctors. That he said that his patients had said that their parents had seduced them, which in our terminology would be molested them in infancy. And so there was a guy called Geoffrey Masson, Masson. I don't know how he pronounces it. He's an American or a Canadian, so what does he know about how to pronounce his name? But anyway, in French it would be Masson. But he wrote a book called, what was it called?
Fraud?
No, it was called something like, I forget what it was called, but the point is, he said that Freud has been told by his patients that they had been molested or seduced in childhood, in early childhood. And Freud came up with the theory that this was their fantasy. And Candace Owens says, because Candace Owens, she gets a lot of things right, but she gets some things wrong. And the things she gets wrong is because she buys into these old Roman Catholic anti-Semitic things. Now, I wouldn't say that, and she wouldn't say that, but that you know what I mean. There's in the cultural backwaters of Roman Catholicism, there's all this anti-Semitic garbage, you know, and so she says that. So this guy Geoffrey, his name is Geoffrey Musaev Masson. He says, well, Freud's patients told him that they had been seduced by their parents. And Freud decided to cover this up by saying they had fantasized. They had fantasized this, right? Okay, so Masson says the truth is that child abuse was rampant, and Freud helped to cover it up. Right? Now,
Assault on Truth.
the assault. That's the book, The Assault on Truth.
I thought it had Freud in the title.
So the point is this: the fact of the matter is that no patient of Freud's ever told him they had been molested by their parents. Never, once. And we can prove this. Okay? Now, okay, I know you're puzzled. I know you're puzzled. So let me just...
How do you prove that?
How
do you prove that something didn't
We
happen?
can prove it. We have, as to adopt the most up-to-mated, that would have been a good one. To adopt the most, I need another glass of wine, I think. To adopt the most up-to-date terminology, we have the receipts.
Nice.
So, the fact of the matter is that no patient of Freud's ever told him that they had been seduced or molested by their parents.
He sounds like a slimy bugger.
Okay, so, but however, Candice, bless her little heart, because this fits in so well with this traditional Catholic anti-Semitism. I'm saying this as I shouldn't, but it's true. But she comes out with this stuff and says that, of course, it's all the Jews doing this, and they're molesting children. And I expect if you gave her a glass of wine and a 5-minute conversation, she would say that they wanted to use their blood to make matzos. But anyway,
Oh my God.
you don't know that was the...
Yeah.
Isn't that the
story.
original blood
Right,
libel?
that was the story, right? Now, the point is, there's been a lot of water under the bridge, and generally speaking, we historians tend to reject that theory of what the Jews were up to, right? Anyway, at least I tend to reject.
She says that on her.
No, she doesn't say that,
Oh,
but but she does pick up on a lot of these traditional Catholic anti-Semitic stories. That seems to be a weakness of hers. It's a pity, but anyway, that's what she does. So I happen to have a certain amount of knowledge of Sigmund Freud, his early cases, how he eventually came to represent them as saying that his patients had told him they'd been seduced by their parents, when in fact not a single one of them ever said that to Freud. So I thought, if I could... so anyways, coming back to this idea that marketing is important in these videos, right? If you're going to come and do a video of this next talk, it's important in these videos what the title is, because some misconceptions about Freud would not get the same number of hits as Candace Owens and Sigmund Freud, right? So this is, Marshall McLuhan said, the medium is the message, and we are now in the medium of putting videos on YouTube, and so what happens is we start to adjust what we're doing, like having a reasonably civilized discussion in my apartment.
Reasonably.
Some more reasonable
we
than
adjust
others,
that.
shall
We
we
adjust
say.
that to the way it
I
can,
have no idea what you're talking about.
we adjust that to the way it can be presented, and the way it can be presented is to get the maximum number of hits. So the medium is the message, or as
I think that's a good
Marshall
saying.
McLuhan said in one of his later books, when he was talking about the auditory implications, the medium is the massage. Now, so I've been trying to get this guy, Ben Levinson, whatever his name is.
Paul Levinson?
He's a philosopher. He was a fairly high-level philosopher, and then he dropped out of philosophy and started writing about popular culture. But he is a McLuhanite, so I want him to write a book, and I could almost write it for him, called The Second Coming of Marshall McLuhan.
Oh yeah.
I remember in the 60s, it was about the same time that I was reading Freud. I was in this little group of Marxists in Birmingham. There was a guy who was, there was a book came out around that time called Eros and Civilization by Herbert Marcuse, and it combines Marx and Freud. So this guy, he might have become my mentor. He was older than me, and he had a lot of the kind of.
What, if you had remained of Marxist, you mean?
But I think I blew my chance of becoming his protege. And I think the reason I blew my chance was because I was an obnoxious prick. So when people said something I disagreed with, I immediately pounced on it and ridiculed it. And that was, you know, I lacked any of these bourgeois graces.
Oh my, you used
that
to
I've-
do that, did you? Really?
That I've recently acquired these bourgeois graces. You might not notice it, but I assure you, if you were to take me back into my proletarian past, you would notice it. Anyway, so that in this little group of Marxists in Birmingham, we had regular meetings. One of them was this guy Ron Cook, who might have become my mentor, but I mentioned to him once, because he was a Freudian and open to all kinds, I mentioned it to him that I had quite a liking for his wife. And he seemed to take this a bit askance. I thought, you know, I'm developing a crush on Daphne, I said to him. And he said, so anyway, that was how I was an obnoxious prick. Anyway, so that was Ron Cook. And so he was, I became a bit alienated from him, so he never became my mentor. But then there was someone else in this group of Marxists who was, this was less common, he was a big enthusiast for Marshall McLuhan. Do you know about Marshall McLuhan? No, I mean, you probably wouldn't, but in the 1960s, for a while he was a huge name. And he was all, and his big slogan was, the medium is the message.
Sounds nonsensical to me.
When I try to explain Marshall McLuhan to people who didn't live through the 1960s, I find it's a bit tricky. They can't seem to get the magic of it. But he was a magical, he was a very straight-laced, conservative dressing, well-mannered Canadian academic. But for a while, everybody was talking about him. And one thing that happened in the 1960s, I'll tell you about this because it's curious in its own right. It was the beginning of videotape. Videotape had just come in. And there was this videotaped interview, and there was this videotaped interview with Marshall McLuhan. And a friend of mine who was caught up in this enthusiasm for Marshall McLuhan, a few weeks after this broadcast of interview with Marshall McLuhan, called the BBC and asked them if he could get a copy of this. And they said they'd already wiped the videotape, because videotape was, in its inception, was so expensive, you couldn't afford to just throw it away or archive it. You had to reuse it.
Huh.
Anyway, so that's an interesting sidelight on this. But so I'm struck by the fact that media have changed so dramatically since the 60s. In the 60s, just think about it, in the 60s, there was no internet. There was no way, if you saw a TV program you liked, of seeing it again. No way. Out of the question.
Did they have decks
What?
in the 60s?
In the 60s, there was no way you
No,
could
no
rewatch a TV program you
show.
would liked.
Oh, okay.
You had to wait for 20 or 30 years before people began the concept of reruns,
Okay.
which didn't exist in the
Oh.
1960s.
Okay. No.
So, I mean, this came home to me when I was doing this recent thing on Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand was a celebrity in the 1960s, and she was interviewed on TV by the top popular sort of slightly intellectual interview programs, and those have been saved, so we can watch them on YouTube now. But most interviews were lost because videotape was so expensive. What are you doing?
Your arms are going all over the place.
But anyway,
He's got an eye on his arm. So.
anyway, so the thing is, the medium is the message. So when we have these discussions, then you come along and start recording them and putting them on YouTube. That changes them completely, because suddenly
Yeah.
the YouTube video is much more important than the mere discussion at the time. And that means you have to start thinking of what you say, because you might say something really stupid which would be immortalized, and you don't want that, right? I mean, at the last meeting we had, what's that guy who's half Chinese but won't admit it?
Gabe.
What's his name?
Gabe.
Yeah, Gabriel. Right? Yeah, he said.
What, the guy who's here tonight?
Yeah.
Gabe?
No,
The youngest guy.
he's a good guy. He's a good guy
Yeah,
in every
he's
way.
very
But
smart.
he said
He struck
well,
me as
that
being
that
very smart.
libertarianism was the realization that everybody's an asshole. Well, that's not the image of libertarianism we want to present. That's terrible. We don't want that. No, everybody's a good guy.
That's
Right.
not. Yeah, that's bad optics.
So that's the kind of thing I mean. But also, if you want these videos to have the maximum, the maximum audience, the title you give them is very important. So if I said some reconsiderations of Sigmund Freud, that wouldn't get many hits. Whereas if I say Candace Owens and Sigmund Freud, that will get 10 times the number of
Let's
hits.
do it then.
Candace Owens, yeah.
Let's do it.
Because
Let's do that topic.
Candace Owens is now the hottest thing
Yeah.
in media. This is the media,
really- he
and
really
and
is silly
she is a
about it.
media she.
He's really silly about her.
I
I
don't.
hate to be ignorant, but who is Candace Owens?
Oh
my
Every
God,
time I-
seriously?
And everybody says, oh.
Why did you ask like 30 minutes into the conversation? Why didn't you ask like
Sure,
first 2 minutes?
I'm trying to
Oh,
think when
Candace
I first
Owens
Because he's,
Okay.
he's an
When did I
Anglo-Saxon.
first-
We're
when
like
did she
that.
first
What's
come
We're
about?
we're very reserved.
Okay.
You know.
I thought it was
So-
a Chinese thing.
You're an
I didn't know
Anglo-Saxon.
Anglo-Saxon
I think
was
so.
reserved.
Yeah,
So-
you very much
Well,
are.
Scandinavian,
Just real
is
quick.
that Anglo-Saxon?
Yeah, that counts. That counts.
So-
Okay.
Yeah, you
So
passed
Ernie,
it.
just real quick, have you ever heard of the term Blexit?
What is it?
Blexit. Have you ever heard of that term?
Blexit. Blexit?
Correct.
No,
Okay.
not until tonight.
Have you ever heard of Turning Point USA?
I have heard of, oh yeah, that's
Okay.
what's his name? Charlie Kirk, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Candace Owens used to work for Turning Point USA.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If there's a black woman who worked for Turning Point USA floating around somewhere in your brain, that's Candace Owens.
Oh, that's
Okay.
How about
right.
the one
Okay.
Shapiro? What's his organization?
Daily Wire.
I think they kicked Candace Owen out. That's
Yeah,
after
she got
Turning
booted.
Point.
She got
She was
booted.
booted out of
Right.
Yeah.
She was at
Before or after
Turning
Turning
Point. She was
Point?
at Turning Point for a few years with Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
I think after that, I know for a while she was doing stuff for Prager University or
Yeah.
Dennis Prager's channel. Like she had her
She was,
podcast.
she
I think
was into all this Zionist stuff.
Yeah, she had. I think she got her podcast to. Her podcast presence got started, I think, on Dennis Prager's channel, YouTube channel. It might have been. I think it might have been the PragerU channel, and then there's her own section or whatever.
No.
Eventually, she made it to Daily Wire. So if you're familiar with Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh, Andrew Clavin, I can't remember.
What is it? Wired? I've heard of Wired. I have
Daily
not,
Wire.
What Daily Wire? I've not heard so much about those. Are these?
Have you ever heard of
these are
Ben?
libertarian, basically?
No, not at all. No. Furthest thing from a libertarian you can think of almost.
Okay.
Anyway,
Well,
there are 2 points you need to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Candace Owens is the most powerful person in media today.
Really? Okay.
Yes, the most
Who does she work for
not the
now?
most popular. That would
Herself.
be Joe. That would be Joe Rogan, but the
Okay.
most powerful. But secondly, she's currently doing a series on Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA and how they're all totally corrupt and all evil in every
And
way.
it's called
right?
So
Bride of Charlie.
It's
What's
called
that?
Bride of Charlie.
Right of Charlie, and she's
and
turned
the
around.
Bride.
Bride, B-R-I-D-E, like Bride of Frankenstein,
Okay.
Bride of
Bride
Chucky.
of Chucky.
Oh,
Bride of Chucky.
Bride,
except it's
Bride
Bride
of Charlie. And she did the 3rd episode tonight.
Oh, okay.
And it's she and people are saying most people are very impressed, but some people are saying, oh, there's nothing there. It's just one little date after another. The point is, it turns out, much to everybody's surprise, that she is a superb researcher. It's like a detective or an attorney researching a case. She gets
she's got a lot of
every little detail,
Yeah.
and it's building up to this implacable conclusion. Erica Kirk is guilty of what we don't yet know exactly. But anyway, so you have, Candace Owens, you have to be alert to Candace Owens.
And how did she's not the woman you wanted to write a book with, right?
Did I want to write
writing a book with somebody earlier?
Did I want to write a book with a woman? I can't imagine
Well,
that.
I was in the kitchen and you were talking about writing a book about Sigmund Freud with somebody.
Yeah, with somebody like Paul Levinson or something.
Oh,
No, that's
All right.
not Freud.
Okay.
Carl Levinson is a big defender of Marshall McLuhan.
Okay.
And I think the time is right for a book called The Second Coming of Marshall McLuhan.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that the way in which the change in media has changed the content of media since, let's say, 1980, with the inception of the internet and with YouTube and things like that, social media, I think is amazing. It's just amazing. But anyway,
So, I want to get back to what you were saying. Tell me the dirt on Ma.
Oh, there was a time like 2 years ago.
Yo-Yo Ma, are we talking about?
Jack
Ma.
Jack Ma. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a different Ma.
Yeah, China was reforming their financial system. It's part of free up their or eliminate the control of currency. That's part of it. You have to have the system in place, not the rudimentary from the back. You have to have the modern system that in line with the international standard. That's part of the thing. So China, the Communist Party, the government was hot on this project, and he was like running his mouth, getting up to the stage, as they say, mocking the government, say they're backward thinking. But you can interpret like, because his interest was affected because he was in the industry first. So he's part of the industry they try to reform. That will cut into his vested interest. Because Alibaba is the parent company's Ant organization, or Ant Group, which covers Alibaba, which is an Amazon-like place, does financial, does loan, does all kinds of financing. So it's a conglomerate. The government's like, this is too big. We're going to reform. We're going to try to rein it in. So you can interpret it that way. So you don't know. Nobody knows what goes on in his head. But the timing-wise, it's cut into his interest. He doesn't like it, so he's just running his mouth. That happens to be approximately a week before the IPO of Ant Group, the conglomerate owning company. That would be the biggest IPO in all of mankind, of all history, of all time. That's because he did that. He said that. Xi Jinping said it's canceled. So you can imagine.
Wait, what's an IPO?
Initial public offering. This is you bring your company to public. You issue initial issuing of stock for people to buy.
Wow.
A lot of people could have made a lot of money. A lot of people could have labored with him, believed in him for all his career. Now it's time for us to really reap the benefit.
And she just said, nope.
Because he ran his mouth, and the government said no. so it's canceled. So you can imagine, he doesn't have to go to jail. He doesn't have to be sentenced or go to court. You know, the pressure from people who believed in his friends, his closest allies, the pressure from them, the complaint, the hatred, it's in and of itself enough punishment. And I don't know, on top of that, maybe government give him a hard time, something, give him like, hey, you're not cool anymore. So just like different system than the U.S., right? If you Elon Musk, if you're a billionaire, if you're donor, you're okay. But in there, that's not capitalist system. It's not okay. So
Although the U.S.
It's a
government
capitalist
broke
system
up,
where they persecute billionaires. That's all.
the U.S. government breaks up things that they think that are too
Yeah.
big. AT&T.
Right.
Yeah, well,
All the
true,
time.
true. But what I'm saying, the other side, we don't know what other things that government did to him, besides canceling his IPO. We know privately his friends, his colleagues, people in him must have given him a huge hard time.
Yeah.
But I don't know, on top of that, Communist Party or government did, I don't know. Maybe they threatened him, we're not only killing your IPO, we're going to kill your company, we're going to break it up. Something that's really, really bad for him. So he was, what I know is, that I don't know exactly what, but you can imagine, you can use your logic, right? When you lack of facts, right? But what I know is he went to Japan for 3+ months. He just went there, just too much heat in China.
Yeah.
He went there, and he came back after 3.5 months. He came back. He shed the CEO of Alibaba or Ant, the title. He's no longer, just like Bill Gates, he's no longer CEO of Microsoft, but he's chairman of something. He's the chairman. He even shed the chairmanship. Jack Ma, he became like a philanthropy kind of foundation. He's the head of that. You know, so then after that, another year passed by. You don't hear much about him, but he will go show in panel discussions, some big conventions. People come in for his name, and oh, Jack Ma. It's a celebrity kind of thing, but he doesn't have a real power on any company. Still has a lot of money. Then, the past year, China has this, I don't know how many, it's like yearly, they have 5-year term for each administration. And that's the 4th one of the term. And they want to really show, especially China's economy is in trouble, like recession with 5% GDP growth. China's in recession, high unemployment rate. They really want to reassure the investors, the entrepreneurs, everybody that China is okay. China will not veer from its set policy, which is open, free enterprise, that sort of thing. So they made a point, invite all the industry leaders, especially the high-tech industry leaders, in one room with Xi Jinping chaired the conference, the meeting. Jack Ma was in there. And Xi Jinping shook his hand and say hi and said something. He did everybody. He didn't skip Jack Ma. Jack Ma was invited. It was not a big gathering. It's like 20 people tops. Jack Ma was among it. That means to the public, it's okay now.
Right.
He's okay.
Yeah.
So that's his saga.
Oh my gosh.
So from that you can get a peek into how Chinese government does things, how that system works.
Yeah, if you piss off the leader, your
Same as
IPO
here.
gets canceled.
You piss off Donald Trump. I challenge you. You try it. It's the same thing, oligarchy, right? But it's different. What class or who is the oligarch? Who is in the oligarchy? Who's the oligarch? It's not billionaires. It's not the capital. It's other people. Well, that's a different story. I know who they are.
That's true, yeah. Although, of course, in the United States, you have the option of just not making any political statements at all. And probably, if you're lucky, no one's going to come after you. Even if you express some opinion about some piece of legislation, be a lot of nonsense.
True, that's not the same level of
So it's different.
freedom of speech,
Yeah, it's a
liberty.
difference.
It's lower level. But if you have higher level of free speech, okay, you're happy about it. You feel like great, we have liberty, but what's the trade-off? Is it worth it? Like a common ground, the chaos, all the things we're experiencing, and more. So for what? For a little bit of free speech, right? But Chinese people, they don't have that level of free speech, but they gain a lot more other things. I would argue real things as opposed to feel
Like
good.
what?
I can denounce publicly the president of the United States, president of the country. Chinese people don't have that liberty. They have to watch their back if they did that, right? But they gain more in exchange. But you can say
What do they gain?
better society, safer society,
Okay, if you think
lower
those
crime,
two are closely
lower
related,
crime,
then
more
that might
common
be true,
ground,
but
more
supposing those
stable
two things-
government,
But supposing
longer
those,
term.
but supposing those two are not closely related.
Right, that's the thing. Well, I can argue with that. I mean, it's possible, but from my perspective, it's kind of related because in a bigger picture, it's not directly related, but there are ways to relate them. And I will challenge you if you break that, you don't see the consequences. I will challenge you.
Well, see, I think my response to that would be the more, as much as I disagree with certain libertarian things, immigration, the standard libertarian line on that, I don't agree, but
Good night.
Gentlemen,
Oh, good
see you
night.
next time.
Yeah,
Take
see you
it
next
easy,
time.
Ernie.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, it was great.
but
Thank
like,
you.
if you had like, let's say you could get to a roughly libertarian state of freedom, any country that did that, but especially if the United States did that, kick China's ass every day. Every day would kick China's ass, and it's not even
It's
close.
fine. Well, I wouldn't argue that point, but
But we're not there. So like, yeah, we can have certain trappings of free speech, like, some random, person can shoot a video and post it to Twitter about like, Trump is the big orange meanie bad man, and like, okay, I guess you have that freedom, but like, that doesn't mean that that this country isn't in the control of some nasty oligarchs who don't have our best interests in mind, and that they could strain our freedom and liberty at almost every turn. Like, what are some examples I'm hearing lately? It's like from this one Rumble program by this one younger Gen Z commentator who will not be mentioned, Nick Fuentes, and he talks about how like the Trump administration has it where like if you're trying to come into the country, America, and they do like a social media search and they find out that you said bad stuff about Israel, they'll not let you in.
that's
Right.
possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll take his word for it. It's not like I looked into it
I think
myself,
that's possible,
but like,
yeah.
yeah, or
you're there already in Columbia University, you
Right.
get kicked out.
and then
something like that.
and then you get deported because you said some bad stuff about
Right.
Israel
Something
or
like
whatever.
that.
And
It's
it's like
possible. At least you get scared.
And Nick, it was funny because I don't think he's wrong, but it was funny the way he said it. It's like, this is like the most Jewish administration we've ever had, and it's like I think he's right.
It is.
I think he's right.
It is.
Is?
It is.
Yeah.
Trump
Yeah.
is most Israel friendly president of all time.
Really? More than Biden?
Oh, yeah, much more.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, not much more, but I mean, they're both extraordinarily pro-Israel, and Trump is a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like
So
the
ugly.
one video I saw that I mentioned before anybody got here, David, the one video I saw from Jimmy Dore was like roughly 12 minutes, where it's if I see in the feed,
I like him.
if I see in the feed a Jimmy Dore video and I see Candace Owens' face, I click because it's like he's got some interesting stuff to say about something that Candace Owens said that was also interesting. And in that video, whatever that video was, I can't remember. Oh yeah, in that video. It was all about, this is where I found out that Jan Bongino was like, go to hell, and I hope whatever that was, like just vile stuff that
Yeah.
I didn't know that he was that kind of asshole, but he is.
Right, he is.
But like there was a different,
What was that from?
Dan Bongino, do you know who that
yeah,
is?
yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do?
He said something along the lines of like, I think referring to people who are going after like, Erica Kirk and whatever, because the whole grieving widow thing. And I don't know if he mentioned her by name because it was a very short clip that was cropped. that Jimmy Dore did of Dan Bongino, but basically something like, these people can burn in hell, like, I know it's bad to say, but these, and he's like MFers, and he's dropping F-bombs and stuff. It was really bad, and it's like, but anyway, in that same video, Jimmy Dore says, but we know what Dan Bongino's first priority is, and he plays a clip of him talking to some woman, and maybe it was his wife, I can't remember, sitting on a couch, and that his greatest driving thing is Israel. And it's like, oh, come on, dude, why? It's like, I can't take what he says seriously. And you know what the shame of it is, too, is there's one episode, I've linked to it in the email threads, like maybe a couple of times over the years. There was one good video he had with Michael Anton from Hillsdale, the DC satellite campus or whatever. Talking about, like, in the lead up to the 2020 election, talking about how the Democrats were wargaming about what to do if this happened and what to do if that happened, and how would they stop Trump taking power even if he won the Electoral College. Like, they were wargaming like a coup, and all this kind of stuff. And it was an excellent episode, and so I thought that Dan Bongino was pretty reasonably solid, and I could just ignore his other crap. But after this, it's just like, oh, okay, no, you're Israel first, and you're going to go after people who are, trying to dig up some stuff. Like, don't mess with David's crush. Come on, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, Dan Bongino's bad. I don't like him.
Yeah,
I don't like
can
him.
tell
I
from
liked
his
him
look.
before his recent outburst.
Yes.
What's that?
I liked him
Yeah.
before his recent outburst.
His commentary. I thought his commentary was interesting. I saw a few episodes, like right after the assassination attempt in Butler. He's former Secret Service, so like his insights were very interesting, and he was pointing out probably some obvious things that I don't think you needed a Secret Service thing for. Like, how was this highest point just a few hundred yards away, not covered by blah blah. Like, he was pointing out some obvious stuff, but I thought overall his commentary was reasonably good. Like, normally I didn't listen to him, but I was like, ooh, I should probably tune in and see what Bongino has to say about this, because this is right in his wheelhouse. But like, geez, did you happen to see the Tucker Carlson interview with Mike Huckabee, the American?
I haven't actually listened to it all the way through. I've seen various discussions of it or references to it, and I can figure out what they said. And I gather that Huckabee couldn't give a coherent explanation of why Israel was entitled to take over the entire Middle East, but did assert that the entire Middle East should belong to Israel. I hope I'm not...
It was interesting because I watched it, and I thought it was good. I think Putin is right. If you remember how the big interview a few years ago was like, Tucker and Putin having that interview, right? And I think after that interview, I remember reading or hearing somewhere that Putin said of Tucker that Tucker was dangerous, as sort of like a compliment, like, oh, this guy's very competent, that he could...
I read that, and then I later read that it's a common expression in Russian. Yeah. And it means like a smart guy. Right.
Dangerous, competent, that kind of thing.
It didn't mean, oh, we should be afraid of him.
Right, no, like, yeah. And I think that came out in this interview with Huckabee, because it wasn't, I don't know that I'd have to listen to it again, and I just might. I don't know that it was so much that Huckabee made that as an affirmative statement. It was the precise questions that Tucker asked laid the pieces out, that was the logical conclusion or the logical entailment of what he was saying.
Yeah.
Because I think it was something along the lines of, because I think it might have been around the whole, does Israel have the right to exist kind of thing. Like, where does this right come from? And, there was like a smattering of like answers, and I think one of the things was, like, oh, it's in the holy book something, I forget which one, Torah, Talmud, something. And then Tucker was like, well, you know, it just so happens that it says, you know, from this point to this point, which actually encompasses a lot of other countries that already exist. So are you saying that this whole thing, that Israel has the right to all this area that's not currently Israel?
Right.
And I can't remember. I'd have to look it over again. But it was something along the line. There was some answer he gave where it was enough of a yes or close enough to a yes where, like, according to Nick Fuentes, the Arab world or the Middle East, the different Middle East countries, like, were way upset about that. You know.
Yeah.
Because it sort of like revealed the game. You know, like there. You know, I mean, there is a greater. My understanding is there is a greater Israel project. You know, it isn't just like the West Bank and Gaza and stuff like that. Like,
Right.
They have designs on wider stuff. You know, so
But the other countries, they have to take a stand, because now it's the public. If you don't say anything, you're like you allowed it. Like what's it called? Silently, you admit it or acknowledge it. So you have to say something. Otherwise, when it happens, you will lose the ground to protest or to do anything to counter it. So they're forcing people's hands. It's not very smart. But we're talking about Huckabee and he's like a fanatical.
And what's interesting is, I'm a part of this group that a discussion group. You know, they listen to people like you. I mentioned them before. You probably don't remember, but people like Paul Vander Clay, who's like a pastor out in California somewhere, like Dutch Reform Christian, Protestant Christian, something. Then there's like Jonathan Peugeot, John Vervaeke. There's a few others that are sort of what's called in this little corner. And so those are some of the people. But like, I don't know precisely what their views are on the whole Zionism thing. But there's one pastor that I discovered recently through Nick Fuentes, a guy by the name of Joel Webbin. Now this guy is really good. He's had Jared Taylor on there, and he's had Kevin McDonald on there. Now, if you're not familiar with the name Kevin McDonald, you look him up. His website project is called The Occidental Observer, White Identity, Interests, and Culture. And he's written a number of books. One of them is what's it called? Culture of Critique is probably the most infamous one, and it's all about how that group you're not allowed to talk about has a group evolutionary strategy, and it's anti-Semitic is the word that would be used to describe it by the people who don't like what he has to say. But anyway, this pastor Joel Webbin guy co-wrote a book called The Hyphenated Heresy. So if you've ever heard the term Judeo-Christian, Judeo-Christian, like, oh, it's the same thing because they both started from the same book, and I haven't read the book yet, but the argument is, my understanding is that no, two completely different things, and then, this Judeo-Christian and this hyphenated heresy is what lends credence and gives power to this whole Christian Zionism thing, where people are under the mistaken impression that, those who bless Israel shall be blessed themselves, or whatever that line is from. I think it was maybe even Genesis, I don't remember. But, the Israel of whenever that was, however many thousands of years ago, is not the, Benjamin Netanyahu state of Israel. Like, we're not talking the same thing.
Right.
But Christian Zionists are under the impression that, and Huckabee is one of those guys. He's one of those people who thinks, Israel and, the Jewish people are special and everything, and it's like, you're leading us down the path to hell, man. Like, and I don't even know he understands it. And it was a fascinating interview between the two of them. It really was, because it was interesting how Tucker was able to ask really good questions in a very, at least the presentation of it, in a very non-confrontational, not abrasive manner, but it was still assertive and probing.
I like his work, but I don't like his laughs.
How's it go, my friend?
Just minus that, I like it.
Yeah.
I like his laugh.
It's a little performative and or just dorky.
I think it's dorky, less a performance.
Yeah,
from him
I
is
don't know.
it's authentic him, and I happen to not like it. But other than that, he's okay. He's pretty good. But I think he's had some ties with Trump. He has some Russian ties. I can't explain it because I don't have all the facts. I only have logic. Because judging by all the things, also my gut. I think in my age I can rely on my gut a little bit more. So he has some ties with Trump, some ties with Russia, or Putin. And other than that, he's okay guy.
Well, maybe. Maybe if you have time, it's not a bad idea to look up. Last year, I don't remember exactly when. It might have been the summer, maybe the early fall. But last year, this was maybe a few weeks or maybe a month or a couple months before Tucker and Nick Fuentes had an interview together, right? Nick had a couple of different programs a week apart. They were on a Friday and then another following Friday, where he goes into Tucker in detail, like really a lot of information, a lot of detailed information about Tucker and his role, his father's role, and all this kind of stuff. And my understanding is his father was involved with the CIA project Voice of America or something, which was like American propaganda radio or something, messaging for Europe or whatever. VOA, right? Yeah, I think that's what it was that he was involved with. And it's like, and apparently, Tucker tried to. The story is that Tucker he applied for the CIA, but didn't get in or didn't get admitted or something. But people are speculating he's still somehow connected or affiliated.
Otherwise,
how is he getting interviews with I think he's had interviews with Viktor Orban. I think he's had interviews with Putin. Interview with Javier Milei. Where's he getting all this access to all these foreigners?
Oh, they can argue why he's famous. They only talk to famous people.
Maybe
they don't want to waste their time. They want to talk to people who have a lot of following. So
could be.
You can argue with that, but I will go with you. Again, it's my gut. Because he started small. He started at Fox News. Well, he started before Fox News, CNN.
He was at CNN and I think
he started
MSNBC
small
for a while,
but still, not many people can start that small. That's still too big for many people to start. You get a gig at CNN prime time. I mean, maybe you have some connections and stuff.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, those people are. It's out of my world. I can only imagine, but it must be nice, right? So that's my gut. And he's not totally clean guy, but that's okay. He's still talented because there are many people with connections. He stands out. Means he's still good with has some talent, some gifted abilities and stuff. Yeah, but I don't like his laughs and he. Oh no, Nick Fuentes said he had an interview with Kenneth Owen in which he said Kenneth Owen's low IQ. Despite all that. And she got all defensive. Why did she get defensive? You could just ignore it, just laugh it off, or just not respond, or just don't care. Why did she get it defensive, right? I mean...
Because there might be a grain of truth there.
That's what I'm saying. She may appear very smart, very good at investigating, like journalism and stuff. But IQ may not have a lot to do with that. It's a different thing. And the fact that she's defensive, she probably knows something about it. I mean,
then again, well, first of all, David says oh, she's a really good researcher. Maybe. I mean, we don't know who's working behind the scenes to, produce all to generate all that.
She has a team.
It could be like a team, and she's just the face that presents it, which is fine. I'm not saying that's illegitimate or anything, maybe that's the best way to do it, who knows, but regardless, but let's just assume for the moment that, it's mostly her. She's doing the research, she's doing the homework, putting it together and putting together a show every day or every other day or whatever. That does take a little bit of some IQ brain power, especially if you're able to find out things, you kind of have an intuition where to look and putting pieces together. There's a certain IQ element to that, but one of the things is, if this is, regarding the different things that have, you know, a certain IQ loading to it, I remember hearing or reading somewhere at some point that like journalism is not super high IQ intensity. Right. It's like
exactly you dig and you're super interested in people.
Yeah.
I know how they function. They don't necessarily have a lot of logic. They just have this innate so keen on people. They pick it up very quickly. They have that gift. They pick it up very quickly, and they're super interested. And they're willing to dig. It's like second nature. They don't even, it doesn't even take any energy, just dig. First reaction, new person, dig who he is or what it's been and stuff. Like, as opposed to someone like me, I was like, I don't care. But someone told me, oh, interesting. You know what I'm saying? There's a difference. It's not like I'm uninterested in people. I'm interested in people, but not that level. I know someone intimately, that's that level, and I see the difference in quality, not in quantity. I mean, it's tremendous. So she may have, Candace Owen may have that knack, but doesn't really equate or translate into general intelligence or cognitive function power. So I still hope the fact that she defended it, she got defensive on behalf of herself and her people, you know, black people.
See,
I was like,
yeah, I never really paid too much. I haven't paid too much attention to that. I did hear that she got defensive, and you know, it's funny because I do listen to Nick regularly, and you know, every now and then it's sort of like, you know, he pretends like there's this love from afar, you know, attraction thing going on, where it's like he says like, Candace, what are we doing? You know, because I think just a few days ago, Candace like quote tweeted him like approving of some kind of tweet that he did, you know, and he's like, yeah, Candace, come on, what are we doing? You know, like, let's get over this, let's stop the beef, you know, let's whatever, you know. And
that may be one-sided. Nick can take it out, can put it down, like nothing happened. Yeah. I know someone like that.
Yeah.
But Candace is not. It's not that type. Number one,
no. Right.
She's a female. Female tend not to have that. Number two, she's like she's maybe low IQ. Maybe there's something about herself, and she's aware of it. She doesn't want people to talk about it. So she will not let it go.
I'm actually going to give her more credit than Nick does on the IQ front, because, you know, okay, yeah, she can botch certain words, you know, more frequently than others.
Yeah, that's not a sign of a low IQ.
Yeah, there's certain things that
I'm not faulting her. Yeah, I do that all the time.
I think that, you know, the ability to speak as well as she does, you know, you can have some smooth talkers who are probably not, they can have a charisma, but that doesn't necessarily mean IQ, but like,
yeah, she has sharpness.
She is sharp. Mm-hmm. She doesn't just have charisma. It just seems like she actually is pretty sharp. You know, like I've seen where, like, you know, she's on a stage, you know, and somebody asks her a question, and I'm impressed with the thinking on her feet, like sharp, clever response. It's like that kind of thinking on your feet, cleverness. That's an IQ loaded thing.
Yeah, if she's low IQ, then the other side will be zero IQ.
Right.
So I see that. I see that. I just want to give her a hard time, because when I see someone getting defensive on behalf of herself and on behalf of her people, like Sub-Sahara, like something like that, I want to laugh. What can I tell you? I have to have some fun. I really don't have much fun otherwise.
She's sort of she's got a good line in humour. You know, there was in that recent one where she followed up on that 15-year-old or former 15-year-old who'd been groomed allegedly by Erica, and she said, so and so who found out about the present whereabouts of this former 15-year-old, said, now nobody's to go and contact her. And Candace says, so she read that out, and she said, so I immediately contacted her. I seem to be incapable of following simple instructions. What is wrong with me?
That's pretty good.
That's so humorous.
Yeah, that's good.
You know,
that's good.
Woo. Yeah, no,
No,
she's
that's
good. She's
that's
good.
really good. Nick takes shots at her all the time, but like, you know, and I haven't seen her show in a while. You know, I might look at this Erica Kirk stuff just because, like, if you're watching.
I mean, it's very, very tediously concerned with little details, and some people would say, "Oh, what's all this about? You know, why does this matter?" But what she's doing is she's showing in meticulous, fine detail how what Erica Kirk says about herself is all wrong, you know. But it's
yeah.
But it's hilarious too. I've never seen the movie Chucky or Bride of Chucky, but if you saw the pictures of the Bride of Chucky,
yeah,
it's like it could be a doll of her, you know, because it's this blonde and it has these eyes that are
oh,
like,
that's awesome.
really like, you know, black eyes, you know, yeah.
I mean, my impression is, you know, like, okay, Charlie Kirk had a lot going for him. Okay, he was a tall guy. He was like what, 6'5"? I think he was like 6.
Really?
He was a tall guy. Yeah, he was a tall guy.
yeah.
He was tall. He had a lot of status. You know, famous and important. You know, knew a lot of important people. All this kind of stuff. Had money. Obviously, had money. You know, so on paper, he's a catch for a woman who might be on the market to look for, you know, a catch. But is he the kind of guy that, you know, a beauty pageant woman is going to be gravitating towards, when she's probably going to be gravitating towards people who have those things and aren't as clunky dorky as Charlie Kirk was? Like, you know, I think she was in a
So he was
relation.
honey trapped.
I don't know. What Nick is saying is that it's not that like they weren't in love or anything. I don't know. I don't care. What Nick is saying is that there's a good chance that, you know, there was some kind of, like, it was a politically arranged marriage of some kind, you know, and that like it used to be in the old days, you know.
Right, but that's exactly what Candace is implying.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, she is careful not to say, this is what happened or that's what happened. You know, she doesn't make assertions. She asks questions.
Ancient aliens.
She just asks questions. But it's clear that what she's hinting at is that there were a group of people who trained Erica to be the kind of person that Charlie would be attracted by.
Allegedly.
And the two of these people, by the way, she was banging before this. You know, I mean, my choice of words was deliberate because I wanted the shock value there.
I almost spit out my drink when you said that. Yeah.
And then, of course, Erica says, in the 5 years before I became involved with Charlie, I never dated anyone.
Yeah, that's not true.
Absolutely, it's not.
No, that's the kind of thing that anybody would lie about.
Yeah, that doesn't pass.
That's a fairly commonplace lie.
Yeah.
But still, you know, the fact is, even if that's true, it still shows she's a commonplace liar. She's not this unusually pristine Christian person, you know. But anyway, no, I think what the implication you get from listening to what Candace allegedly claims had allegedly happened was that there was this plan to, with which Erica was involved in, but where she was taking direction from others, to entrap Charlie, to get Charlie to fall for her by training strongly to be just the kind of person, just the kind of humble Christian soul that Charlie would warm to, and that this was all done in order to take over TPUSA by this group. And the key figures are these two guys whose names escape me right now, and also Candace's mother, Laurie. She comes out as a real criminal in all this.
Candace's or Erica's?
Erica's mother. Yeah. So she turns out to be a real criminal and involved in all sorts of provable crimes, you know, that were taken to court and everything. You know,
Really?
yeah. Oh no, if you listen to the whole of what Candace says, there's a lot. I mean,
And her father was actually a.
if you listen carefully to a lot of what she has the receipts.
Yeah. Right. Wasn't her father in the CIA or something?
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. She just goes through all this stuff, and this is CIA, and how there's all these connections to Fort Huachuca, and then Erica says, when asked, some obscure place in Arizona, when she knew where Erica had to know all about Fort Huachuca, and that it was the central training for U.S. military intelligence. And you know, I mean, there's so much circumstantial stuff, you know, that Erica was actually, she was making this movie, although for some reason it was shut down and never released.
I think it was like a crowdfund attempt or something like Patreon or something like that.
And it was all heavily involved with Fort Huachuca and U.S. military intelligence. And so, you know, the general impression of all this detail. You know, I mean, what's his name? Do you ever watch Lionel Nation?
I'm not even familiar with that.
Yeah, you should watch him. Lionel Nation. And he's this, says this 81-year-old, he's this old guy. I think he's about 87. And I always liked him way back, years ago when I came across some of the stuff he'd done. But he's really backing up Candace all the way.
What is it, Wolf and...
Oh, there's that other guy from Wolves and Finance. Have you seen him?
Wolves and Finance,
Have you seen him? His name is Chuck de Gregario, something like that.
I've seen this guy before.
Which one? Lionel Nation?
Yeah, the round glasses.
Yeah.
Oh, it used to be RT with RT there.
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, really?
I don't know. He may still be with RT.
I mean, the point is, he says, you know, that he was a trial lawyer for many years, and used to collecting research on people that they were looking at to try and find evidence of criminality. And he says that what she's doing is really superb, you know, just in terms of, it may not, you may listen to it and say, oh, she hasn't proved anything. But the fact is, it's all very, very intensive, detailed background research. And it shows in great detail. And it's cumulative, you know, from episode to episode. There's been 3 episodes now. That it shows that Erica's account of herself and her life is totally misleading. You know, she was constantly in all these beauty pageants for years, and eventually she struck it rich by becoming Miss Arizona. And then she constantly had these relationships with these athletes, with baseball players or whatever. Football, I don't know what.
Minor league.
I don't know anything about American sports, but anyway, you know, and then it's all consistent with the story that she was honing her skills at entrapping men, and then her mother Laurie and these 2 guys who were trying to take over TP USA and are basically gangsters. One of whom has, you see this?
Oh, that's wild.
He has the word pizza tattooed on
you're shitting me. Come on.
on his inside lip.
On the inside
And
of his lip.
he's the main guy at TP USA now. I forget his name. He's one of the 2 or 3 main guys.
So ultimately, the murder,
and
they had to
Erica
take
did
over
something
by
like
murdering Charlie.
Yeah, that's the
That was in the book?
well. I mean,
What's
that's
the thing about
the
Erica
point
going
is
to
we
Romania
don't.
or
I
something?
mean,
I heard about that.
Yeah.
she doesn't commit herself to any definite theory, so it's possible that the Zionists had some other operatives who killed Charlie, and and that this group were given this group. I mean, the point is this group would do whatever the Zionists paid them to do. So even if they didn't
May
believe
not
in
be,
it, you know,
may not be Erica's idea.
yeah, I mean, and even if what they believed is irrelevant anyway, because they would just go what they were, they'd just do what they were paid to do. So it could be that they killed Charlie, and that she was in on it, or it's also possible she was completely innocent of that, but it was just a lucky outcome that Charlie was killed, because she got to be over all this little group of gangsters and criminals basically used her as a figurehead, you know, then. It's all what first of all, well, the thing about what's her name, Candace, is that on this kind of detailed stuff like TPUSA, she doesn't really make wild allegations, but she just asks questions, and you can tell by the questions what wild allegations she would make if she were the kind who would make wild allegations. So my point is that when she talks about these more cosmic, really big things, she does do more than ask questions, and she comes out with all this medieval Roman Catholic anti-Semitism about the conspiracy of the Jews to do this or that, and so I think I think I can do a good little talk on Candace Owens and Sigmund Freud, because she says that Freud was this preacher of, so she thinks all these Jews are practicing child molestation, right? So she has Freud as this Jewish mystic and a leader of a bunch of Jewish mystics who were covering up the fact that there was child molestation was rife, right? Now I think the truth is that that no one ever told Sigmund Freud that they'd been sexually molested, but Freud made that up, and that was part of his development of psychoanalysis. And I don't think he was he was certainly Jewish, and that's an interesting thing, because of course he was I was going to say christened, but that wouldn't be right. He was given the name originally Shlomo Sigismund Freud, which sounds a little bit of the chosen. But then it became Sigmund Freud, which sounds quite Irish, as we might say. And in fact, you know, I mean, without any preconception that any of this would happen, I've read quite a bit about Freud over the years, and I've read quite a bit about his precise attitudes towards Christianity, Judaism, and all the rest of it. And I think that, I mean, one thing that years ago I read about this, and it suddenly struck me. Oh yeah, I see that. There was Freud, and then after a while, the second most popular Freudian was Carl Jung. Okay, and then later they had a falling out, and Jungianism became a different thing.
Jung had his religion problems too.
Freud and Jung became like opposites in some ways. But the thing is this, originally, after they recruited Jung to the psychoanalytic cause, they were all delighted, because all these Viennese Jews, which is all what they all were, had got a non-Viennese, non-Jew to be part of their movement. And they thought so high, and he was in every way as Aryan as you could wish. He was a Protestant who had his own clinic and had some standing in Switzerland, and whose father was a Protestant pastor. So he was in every way totally of the Goyim. and they thought this was great tactically, because it would help to prevent the idea that there was something peculiarly Jewish about psychoanalysis, and that was their theory, and they were right, of course. And Jung was a kind of poster child for a while as being a supporter of Freud. I mean, Freud and Jung toured the United States together before their break. Yeah, they came to the United States on a lecture tour, and they were both representing this new idea of psychoanalysis, which Freud had originated allegedly, and which Jung was a supporter of. And of course, the fact is, all along, Jung was thinking, well, it's not all about childhood fantasies of sex. There is other things going on. So in some ways, if you look at Freud and Jung is being basically quite reasonable. I mean, that sounds a dotty thing to say because Jung was such an idiot in some ways. But and compare him with Freud, he never swallowed this idea of all being about childhood sex fantasies. He just never accepted that. But anyway, Jung was in some ways an independent thinker, but he did share with Freud this idea that there is this vast world of the unconscious, which we can't know anything directly about, but which affects all our behaviour, and that's the basic idea of psychoanalysis, So the idea that Freud was dedicated to some kind of malignant Jewish cult taking over and promoting child abuse, I think, is completely wrong. There's no evidence for that at all. But what there is evidence for is that Freud and his early associates were acutely aware of the fact that they were all Jewish, and they didn't like this, and they tried to get some cover for it by and they thought it was great that they recruited Jung, who was clearly not Jewish in any way, right? This is a bit so Candace's narrative that she implies here, I think, is absolutely wrong. And the main thing is she takes this book by Masson, Masson, Jeffrey Moussaieff Masson, who wrote this book, The Assault on Truth. And Masson argued that Freud heard his patients telling him that these are adult patients, right? But they said, when I was a little child, I was sexually molested by my father. And Freud argued that there was a period in Freud's life, for not much more than a year actually, less than 2 years, where this was like round about sort of in the 1890s, right? Where Freud said, this is my great discovery. The cause of neuroses is, neurosis means mental illnesses, mild mental illnesses where people are troubled but are not dangerous. So just the kind of people who fairly well-to-do middle-class families would pay big fees to an analyst to have interminable discussions with their daughter or whatever. So Freud said, well, this is the explanation for the fact that there are neuroses. And of course, this is part of a big cultural movement that actually, like nearly everything that happened at that time, began in Paris with people like Charcot and mesmerism was, well, Mesmer was Austrian, but he went to Paris and became famous. It coincides roughly with, novels like Madame Bovary, things like that. So all these things in fiction, in the arts, in neurological medicine allegedly, although they weren't doing any study of nerves, they were just talking to people. The analysts, the professors, the doctors were all male, and the patients were all female, and they would go on. So this was a big thing. Charcot and people like that they'd go on stage and they'd interview some female, and she'd start doing irrational things, And so the big question in all this is, what is wrong with women? And this is the big question of the 1890s. One of the big questions, right? What the fuck is wrong with women? Of course, you know, they're all males doing this, and they're talking knowledgeably to each other. Oh, yes, she said this. You know, it's all sort of like a kind of pornographic display. People are going along to witness this happening. And these poor women are being manipulated and coerced into acting out a part. They know they'll be rewarded and get more attention if they say outrageous things and so on. You know, so the whole social and of course this was the great age, the late 19th century, where the big mental illness was hysteria, and hysteria was having an illness that couldn't be diagnosed and therefore was in the mind of the patient, right? So that was hysteria. Of course, hysteria, as you know, comes from the Greek word for a womb. So it wasn't as though this was entirely liberally assorted among the population, right? There's a certain bias there. So hysteria. So one of the first books where Freud made his mark was he wrote with another person called Breuer, and it's called Studies in Hysteria. And so everybody accepted that the main kind of mental illness was hysteria, and this was having illnesses that didn't really exist objectively. So in my mind, I mean, when I first read this in the 60s, I was amazingly gullible. I thought this was all quite convincing. But looking back on it, you know, doctors can't diagnose what's wrong with someone, so they blame the patient. You know, it's that simple. You know, the patients are having fantasies. So, and of course, we still retain the term hysterical pregnancy, where a woman has all the observable features of a pregnancy, but isn't really pregnant, right? And this is a kind of legend you keep hearing about, but whether it actually ever happens is not quite so clear, you know. But so anyway, yeah. So the truth about Freud and hysteria and how Freud got launched and everything is just as discreditable to Freud, but it is not. I mean, if you know, when I look back on, I read in the 60s, I read this book that was recently out in Penguin, by Sigmund Freud, called Two Short Accounts of Psychoanalysis. And I read that book, and I thought, oh, this is a perfectly reasonable. Though I had some friends who were enthusiastic Freudians, and I didn't become an enthusiastic Freudian particularly, but I thought, oh, this is quite reasonable, you know. And you know, I either knew or could have easily deduced that in these early books by Freud, he actually covered all his patients, because it's part of Freud right from the beginning that all his treatments of patients, which are basically having conversations with them, you know, that this took a long time. So it's not as though Freud was getting one patient one day and another patient the next day. These were all extended things where well-to-do families were paying Freud's fees, you know, to talk to their daughter or whatever, or in some cases the wife of the family. And there were male patients as well with Freud. But, you know, it should have occurred to me, because it's so obvious in retrospect, that Freud had only in his life had less than 20 patients, and all of them he paraded in these writings, and all of them, we now know, he totally misrepresented.
Why did he do that?
Well, you see, the thing is this, there's all kinds of misrepresentations. For instance, one misrepresentation is he gave the impression they were all cured after his dealings with them. And in fact, there is no evidence that Freud ever helped anyone. There is no evidence that Freud ever had a successful cure. No, none. And there are several cases where he claimed then all her symptoms went away and she was cured. And we know that did not happen because that person has been identified and was in fact treated and was institutionalized years later, right? But the main way in which the deception came in was there was this period where there was this period of less than 2 years where Freud said the reason we have these neuroses, in other words, the reason we have hysteria, is because in their early childhood, these people were, usually women, were seduced, he said. I mean, we would say molested or abused. He said seduced, right? They were seduced by their parents, by their fathers. We now know because people have collected all the different accounts Freud made of the same patients at different times, that originally Freud said, so-and-so, this patient, I could never convince her that this had happened. You know, in other words, when Freud said later on, they told me.
Oh, this is like satanic panic.
Yeah. That was a later thing of the same thing. Yeah, they told what Freud meant. I mean, it's like saying when 9-year-old Tommy blushes when he hears the name Mary, he's telling us that he's in love with Mary, right? So it's Freud interpreting their symptoms as being telling him, right? So when he suggested to a female patient, oh, so you had sex with your father when you were 8 years old, or no, actually it was always earlier, 4 years old, when you had sex with your father when you were 4 years old, and she would just look astonished and a bit put out. He would say, oh, that reaction is you telling me that this is true.
Wow, that's some major gaslighting right there.
Right. So this is what Freud did. And then over time, as he kept referring to these cases, because he only had a handful of cases, he changed it so that the reader would think, as I did when I read Two Short Accounts of Psychoanalysis. I just thought, oh, this woman said to Freud, when I was 4 years old, my father had sex with me. I thought this was actually what she'd asserted. Not a single one of Freud's patients ever asserted that.
So he was actually a creep.
Oh, Freud was a complete creep. But the point is, he wasn't really doing this.
You guys are getting a 2-for-1 tonight, huh?
He wasn't.
Right, exactly.
Right.
We have all on tape.
I'm going to bed.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So the thing is, Freud wasn't doing this out of prurient interest, as they used to say. He was doing it because he wanted to make his fortune in a great discovery. And there was a period when he thought that the great discovery would be that all neuroses begin with childhood seduction. That has a mentally disturbing effect on the woman, right? And so later, when she's 40 years old or whatever, or just in her teens, if she's 17 or something, that the neurotic symptoms appear. But we can explain what they are by tracing them back to this seduction by her father. And then once we talk to her and work through this, and she remembers clearly that her father did this, then she'll be cured. That was what Freud said for 18 months, right? But then, while that was going on, Freud found that not a single person would believe him. This theory was just so incredible. And I must say, this is my credulity. I read this Two Short Accounts of Psychoanalysis in the 60s. It was a New Penguin. I just thought, oh, this is amazing. I wasn't bowled over because I wasn't looking for anything like that. But I had this friend who was a big promoter of Freud, and I thought, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. But what about all the decades since then, why is it that Freud found that 100% of his patients told him they'd been seduced by their fathers, but since then it's very rare, very, very rare for a patient ever to say, when I was 4 or 5 years old, I was seduced by my father. It's just incredibly rare, far, far less than 1%, right? I mean, it just hardly ever happens. No doubt it does happen now and then, but it's just, so why is it that every single one of course I didn't clearly understand as I was reading this when I was in my 20s. I just thought, oh, this is quite plausible, and it didn't strike me, as it should have done, if I'd been more critical, that, you know, it's very rare for a patient to say to the therapist, when I was first of all, what do you remember clearly when you were 4 years old? There was that point. Secondly, so that's one thing that didn't occur to me, that since then, very, very few people say, when they're interviewed by a therapist, oh yes, I remember that when I was 4 years old, my father had sex with me. That hardly ever happens, hardly ever. But Freud says every single one of my patients said this, right? But the other thing that is so crazy about this, and that I didn't think about at the time, is that Freud's whole theory is that this experience is so horrible to contemplate that it's been repressed. So how is it that the patients told him this? But this whole theory is supposed to show that they couldn't remember it because it had been repressed. So what happened was that Freud had adjusted his theory to say that these people who told him this, allegedly, and one of them ever told him this, but except in this metaphorical sense, that they, by their symptoms, like of sleeplessness or feeling edgy or whatever their symptoms were, that's how they told him. But the whole theory is supposed to rest upon the fact that this has been repressed. So Freud changed his theory, and then there was a period where both versions of the theory were being talked about. But if cornered, Freud would say, oh yeah, I didn't mean that they actually had been seduced by their fathers. I meant that they'd fantasized that. Of course, that makes it all the more guilty, and why they would want to repress it, because it was their fantasy, right? So his theory became, and this then remained the theory of psychoanalysis, that every child, every little child, 4 years old or thereabouts, wants to have sex with his or her mother and kill his father, right? Which is the Oedipus story. Oedipus in the Greek drama, which is based on a kind of myth. Oedipus, unbeknowingly, has sex with his mother, doesn't know it's his mother, and then kills his father, doesn't know it's his father. So that's the plot of King Oedipus, right? So this becomes the Oedipus complex. I think Americans say Oedipus, which strikes me as strange, but anyway, I've heard it both ways. So this is the basis then of Freud's theory, but I should have seen it. I should have seen it when I was first reading this stuff, when I was aged about, I don't know, 20, something like that. I should have seen that this couldn't possibly be true. And so various people have done research work, and they've shown that, you see, the early accounts, Freud says, I tried to convince them that they had had sex with their fathers, and they wouldn't accept it. But then later he would say, they told me they'd had sex with their fathers, and if anybody had ever called him up on this, he would have said, well, they told me by their symptoms. Because they were because they were overeating or over anxious or whatever, they were telling me that they'd had sex with their fathers. See this? So this is how it changed. This is how it changed. And you know, there are cases where these patients of Freud became famous, and other people interviewed them, and none of them ever believed for a moment that Freud had any idea what he was talking about. They all thought he was a nutcase. You know, so but so Freud was a liar, a con man. He was probably, he was deluded as well. He promoted the use of cocaine and took it himself for a long period. This is a period where cocaine was a fairly new drug, and many doctors were saying, "Oh, this is a wonder drug; it cures everything," right? And Freud was one of them. He was a big promoter of cocaine. Now I don't know he's wrong. Maybe cocaine is a wonder drug, and maybe the present view that it's a horrible addictive drug. Maybe it's, yeah, Coca-Cola was promoted on the idea that it had cocaine in it, and that was added to the excitement. You know, it's always got, because cocaine comes from the coca leaves, which people in the Amazon basin used to chew, I don't know whether it's now since COVID, I suspect everything the medical profession says. So maybe COVID is a wonderful drug and not in the least bit harmful. But anyway, that's not the present view, but it was a common view in the late 19th century. Yeah. So the idea that when Masson said Freud first of all said that these people had been literally molested by their parents, and then subsequently covered this up by saying they had only fantasized that. Masson was missing the point that none of them ever told Freud they'd been molested by their parents. It was something Freud read into their behavior.
Right, he was redefining the word tell.
Right, tell, yeah.
Or you can hypnotize this person and get them out of them when they're in the state of
maybe, if you believe in hypnosis, yeah. No, Freud was a dabbler in hypnosis, among other things. But Freud kept on adjusting his theory and adjusting his story of how he'd come by his theory. He was very dishonest and very like he would wait until certain people were dead before he'd attribute certain ideas to them, so that they couldn't contradict him. And he'd say, so and so told me this, and it was clearly if you look at all his correspondence and everything, it's clearly untrue. And so Freud, in his early years, wanted to make a name for himself, and he knew that he was going to make a name for himself by some association of sex with mental illness. Right, that was exactly how he was going to develop this theory. Was very unclear, but that was his fixed idea. But he operated by attaching himself to another person, who was his partner, and then he would use that person's ideas. And there were two particular cases, and they were Joseph Breuer, with whom he wrote Studies in Hysteria, and then the other one was, what was his name? I'm forgetting now, but there was this other guy that he was and in both cases he used these people and tried to develop a partnership with them. And then he betrayed them and misrepresented them after he'd broken with them. But then he reached a point where he wrote The Interpretation of Dreams, the book called The Interpretation of Dreams. And that became, a success. It was a minor success. And that got him a following. So there were people who heard, this great book by Freud, The Interpretation of Dreams, and then people began to attach themselves to him. And then he was promoted. He'd been a Privatdozent, which was an unpaid lecturer in a university, so he could give lectures, but he relied on what the students paid him because the university wasn't paying him. But then he was promoted to being a full professor. Basically just means a teacher who was paid by the university. And then that added to his luster and the fact that he was now a university professor, and he had this successful book, The Interpretation of Dreams. Then he began to attack. It became a cult, and there were people who became dedicated Freudians, and attached themselves to a bit like Ayn Rand. There's the cult, there's the individual who comes out with all this crap, and then there's the gullible followers, and then his reputation began to spread, and people came from all over Europe to talk to the great Professor Freud, So then, as we get closer to the 1930s, the Nazis didn't particularly like psychoanalysis because it was all Jewish. But they didn't mind Jung, because Jung was not only totally Irish, but he didn't talk about sex so much. He talked about mythology and the symbolic nature of mythology. That's how Jung evolved. And
Jordan Peterson takes a lot from
what's that?
Jordan Peterson takes so much from that.
Yeah. And so Jung, and Jung, although he'd been this close follower of Freud for a few years, and then he'd become a more distant follower. So he'd been associating with although he was a Swiss German with a Protestant background, he was associating with all these Viennese Jews who were followers of Freud. He began to be put at distance. So the Nazis quite liked him because he was not in the least Jewish, and because instead of talking about children being seduced by their fathers, which the Nazis didn't take kindly to that idea, he talked about the archetypes, and the archetypes were these fundamental ways of thinking, if you look at different myths, according to Jung, you would find that there were these fundamental ways of thinking which were not culturally transmitted, and Jung was very insistent on the fact that this is something inherited. So it can't be explained by culture, which would be a matter of hearing what other people have said and repeating it, right? So the Nazis quite liked Jung, and he didn't denounce them or anything, so that's another element in the break. So then all the Viennese Jewish Freudians left Germany because they saw what was coming, and they moved, most of them, to the United States. And then so they showed this wave of Freudianism in the United States, and all these analysts who had this thick Viennese accent, and so they were obviously very profound thinkers. They started doing psychoanalysis. I remember there was this TV show called Mad Men.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've seen clips too.
I watched the first 2 episodes, and then I got sick of it and I didn't follow up. But that was about psychiatrists in the 50s in the US. That was part of the background to it. And
I thought it was advertising. I thought it was all advertising marketing executives or something. Mad Men, right?
Yeah, they came into it, but an important part of it was psychoanalysis.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, I'm sure you're right, but there was also this element of, this was a time, when.
I just remember seeing clips of Christina Hendricks.
Yeah, there was this
It was
time.
a different show by the same name, like prior.
There was this time when American marketing people were saying that they had secrets for discerning people's unconscious impulses, and it was all based on Freudian psychoanalysis. And then a bit later than that, maybe in the 60s, there was that book, The Hidden Persuaders, by Vance Packard, which argued that advertising was manipulating us, because they got the techniques from these psychiatrists on how people could be manipulated by manipulating their unconscious. I mean, the thing is, I thought at the time when I read that stuff, I was a convinced Marxist, and I was quite ready to believe that the advertisers were manipulating people. You know, I didn't have any objection to that, but it did strike me that some of these things that Vance Packard talked about in that book were far too obvious. You know, that like, I don't know, he said, there was this soup company that gave away stockings or something with the soup, and he said, well, that introduces an association between feet and soup, which is not a nice association. And I thought, well, that's bloody obvious. You don't need a Viennese person with a Viennese accent to tell you that, you know. And so, but even back then, when I was ready to believe that the advertisers had got hold of techniques to secretly control people's minds, I was ready to believe that. But I thought, this is very unconvincing. You know.
So in other words, Freud was a fraud.
Yeah, that's often been pointed out. Yeah, that's not new, so don't rely on
I know.
Don't rely on that at the high-toned
the pregnant
cocktail
pause.
parties that I know you frequent.
Yeah. The pregnant pause was facetious.
Yeah, right. No, what else was I going to say about Freud and these things? Oh yeah, Freud had a son-in-law.
Bernays,
yeah. Bernays, I suppose it would be in German. But yeah, so he became the big promoter of this hidden persuasion kind of thing in propaganda, political propaganda, and a big booster of the new discipline of public relations. That's what Bernays was, and he was actually the son-in-law of married one of Freud's daughters, I think. He had some family relationship with Freud.
That's what people mean when they say that the advertising industry, you know, was based on, you know, psychoanalysis is the Bernays.
Right. Well, you know, I imagine, you see, psychoanalysis would be one story that might add to the appeal of an ad, because just like if you gave it an Islamic interpretation, it would add to the appeal because there's something a bit strange about it, you know. I mean, in other words, it doesn't show that that following Freud's theories was particularly effective. You know, it just shows that if you're doing ads to persuade people and you've got some weird theory, that probably helps to add distinctiveness to the ads, you know. So I don't think that the Freudians were ever particularly successful at running advertising. So it's amazing, actually. It's how popular among intellectuals Freudianism was for a while. I mean, for many years. And
Isn't he still popular among like certain left-wing stuff
you
today?
find it in strange places. It's in one sense it's far less popular than it used to be, in the sense that people who go to university and do psychology, they're given Freud as a very minor part of the history of psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not taught Freud as being anything worth paying attention to. You know, in that sense, it's far less influential than it used to be. On the other hand, there are people who've never taken a degree in psychology who are just general intellectuals. You know, Hayek wrote this thing that was back in the 60s, I think, that you have these intellectuals who don't know much about anything. And there are certain ideas that are very prevalent among these intellectuals. And then if one of them happens to know something about a subject, then they know that this received sort of bunch of ideas is false because they know something about that subject. And they know that in that area it's completely false. And Hayek points out, you know, you often meet people who say, well, in the area I know something about, all this socialist crap doesn't work, but outside that it must be true, you know. They're quite credulous.
It sounds very much like, I'm sure I mentioned it once or twice before, it sounds very much like when Scott Adams would refer to Gell-Mann amnesia, which roughly is, you know, let's say you're some person and you read the news, you watch the news or you read the newspaper and you think, you know, maybe the news gets things wrong every now and then, or they don't do the best job all the time, but generally speaking, you know, they're probably right, you know, they're experts and all this kind of stuff. But then when they report on something that you know something about, I don't know, let's say it's some area of the law and you're a lawyer, or let's say has something to do with science like astrophysics and you happen to have an advanced degree in astrophysics or whatever, and then because you have the expertise yourself, you can see how full of shit they are on that one thing that you happen to be an expert on, which makes you which the interesting part of the where the Gell-Mann amnesia part comes in is, but you don't sort of
don't think because they're lying to me about this, they must be lying to me about everything.
You sort of forget how unreliable they were on this one thing where you happen to have the expertise to check it yourself, but you just kind of go on thinking like, oh yeah, everything else is fine, you know. So that sounds very much like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Which is funny.
Yeah.
But I think we should give them the second chance. Also, at least we owe it to ourselves to keep an open mind. Just because they're wrong, their approach, when applied to one thing, is proven wrong because I happen to have intimate knowledge in that, doesn't mean I should dismiss all of the other applications. Just like when Candace Owens says something wrong, well, I still keep an open mind when she's talking about something else.
Right.
Otherwise, I miss out. Maybe what if she's right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we judge by each case. We don't just blindly believe her, or we don't blindly disbelieve her. We just judge by each case on its own merit.
Right.
So give our own ourselves a chance.
Yeah.
So we don't
I
miss
think
out.
that's fair. I think that's fair.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's fair. I also think that there is something to the effect. I think there is something explanatory about that Gell-Mann amnesia. Is that, you know, okay, fine, sure, you know, have an open mind, case by case, but you should still be you should still be sort of keeping a tally in your mind, so that if it happens again, you can sort of keep like a running tally to see.
Yeah.
If there's a trend or a tendency, if there's a pattern,
we'll take that into consideration. But we don't automatically dismiss it.
Because as a matter of fact, you could argue that is an informal logical fallacy if you take the one data point and extrapolate it, and from that you say, therefore, that must be true of the broad generality of the situation.
Yeah, that's bad too.
I forget the precise name. I think it's like converse accident, and I think it's often called hasty generalization. It's an informal logical fallacy, right? If you make that sort of deductive conclusion on that, like you shouldn't, that's a fallacy, but be like, I'm going to keep that in the back of my mind, and, you know, that's what you should be doing.
It weighs
you know?
more and more.
You know,
you can't
and it's the kind of thing like, you know, but on the flip side of that, if you do think you know, if it doesn't change how you view it at all, that's also a problem. So like if you know, the news reports on something you happen to be an expert on and you can see how full of shit they are. Maybe they're just sloppy and they get it wrong, or maybe like David was saying, like they're actually just lying to you straight to your face. Whatever the case may be, they've proven themselves to be unreliable on the subject matter you happen to know about. What that should do is that should make you question things. It doesn't necessarily mean that you assume everything else is wrong or everything else is false.
Right.
You're, to the extent that you have a skepticism meter,
Right.
it
More
should
alert.
go up. It should go up after you see that.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what
that's
I
what
mean?
I'm saying. You take that into
Yeah,
consideration.
you take that into consideration.
Until
It should go
some
up.
point in the future, you want to
You
just
know.
automatically dismiss it. That's enough evidence, and I don't want to waste time on that source.
Then again, one of the things, you know, I'm having a sort of ongoing sort of cold, you know, if there's a Cold War where it's not hot war, let's call it a cold debate I'm having with Lee about the reliability. I think I mentioned it in one of the previous ones where Richard Hanania had written a piece that the mainstream media is essentially honest and good. And I'm just thinking like, no.
Really?
Yeah. So Hanania believes this. I don't. And I believe Lee does as well, and which is
He also agrees with you.
no, he agrees with Hanania.
He agrees. Why?
Mostly.
Why would anybody think that? Well, I mean, why would anybody who knows as much as Lee think that?
Well,
I can't get it. What?
you know, that's actually that was actually one of the things that I think one of the things you could throw out there as, you know, like I just got caught up on the email threads. Just got caught up today because it's hard to keep up, and I don't make it any better. But one of the things that could be, because it seems most of the time it seems like appropriately so, it seems like there's some kind of pertinent, timely issue that gets thrown out to the thread. I think maybe every now and then we should have one that's sort of like a general thing. You know, like the media, the mainstream media is basically honest and good. Discuss, you know, and you know, if it's worth a thread, maybe. If it's not worth a thread, that's fine. You know.
I just can't. It's difficult for me to put myself in the mind of someone, except a complete imbecile or ignoramus, who believed that. You know, I just can't see how you would arrive at that. I mean, obviously Hanania is reasonably intelligent, and so is Lee, so there must be some explanation, but I just don't see it. You know, I mean, there's so many examples. I mean, when they were misleading us about COVID, and saying that we had to maintain social distance and that we had to not visit our dying grandparents because what this or that stupid reason, you know.
Russian collusion
story. You know, what they keep on accepting things. Now you could argue, oh, they're just reporting what other people are saying, but I don't buy that. I mean, I think that there was an eagerness of the general population to accept a lot of that stuff about COVID and about Russia collusion. You know.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
I just don't.
6 feet social distance. You can still things like in the elevator, some space still on the floor. Right? When I went to China in October, Shanghai, we saw the same thing. Still on the floor. They didn't remove it on the elevator and stuff. But in China it was 1 meter, so it's about 3 feet. A little over 3. So Chinese social distance is shorter than the American social distance.
Right.
It's arbitrary. It's arbitrary.
You have a whole bunch more people. You got to fit them in.
I guess they'd have to be practical.
You know, you guys got like 4 or 5 times the population.
Are you a communist mouthpiece now? You do a better job than me. You took my job.
And you know, East Asians are generally more hygienic than Westerners anyway. So I can understand them not having such a close tolerance of what might be infectious and so on. But I mean, but the thing is, and actually one of the many amazing things about COVID is that originally, when it was first being publicised, they talked a lot about what was happening in China and how people were being locked up in their apartments, and in some cases, I remember there was one case that the police welded the doors shut so they couldn't get out. But instead of saying, as you might expect, well, this is what happens in a totalitarian state, people think, oh, it must be such a tremendous danger that these measures are called for, you know.
But you know, so basically, the media is honest and good, and basically honest and good. The debate is, you know, the response I keep getting, or that I've gotten a number of times is, you know,